not only a warm welcome to all the runners and all the competitors, but also a warm welcome to all the fans on the stands. If you're not running, let me hear you! And if you're not running, let me hear you louder! This is Amsterdam. This is the TCS Amsterdam Marathon. Bring the energy to all the competitors, all our TCS superheroes. A few minutes to the start. We're going to have a marvelous day. The weather couldn't be better.
Being broadcast to you live from the city's famous Olympic Stadium. Conditions here this morning are near perfect for the 15,000 runners taking part in today's marathon. Dry and with very little wind, and with temperatures currently at around 11 degrees and forecast to rise to around 14 degrees by lunchtime. And interestingly, the conditions on the banks of the River Amstel, which the runners will reach in about an hour's time, look quite similar, just a bit warmer than now, but still with very little wind. Well, if you're a runner, and especially one of the thousands of foreign runners here in Amsterdam today, you will have heard all about Amsterdam's fast marathon course. If you're a tourist, you're more likely to know of its famous museums and canals, not to mention its tulips and the beautiful Amstel River, which gives the city its name. Let's take a few moments now to enjoy some of the famous attractions on offer to the international visitor. Well, we're now back live in the stadium which hosted the 2016 European Athletics Championships, and going further back was where the Olympics were staged just over 90 years ago. Well, today a total of almost 45,000 participants are taking part in today's races. 121 nations represented in the marathon with 15,000 participants. Well, I've already mentioned Amsterdam's reputation for producing fast times on its pancake flat course. Let's now have a look at today's marathon route. Starting out from the Olympic Stadium, out through Vondel Park, past the Rijksmuseum, and then heading south to the banks of the River Amstel to the village of Oudekerk for the turnaround point, and then winding its way back through the city centre, across the Amstel and through Vondel Park back to the stadium. Well, a packed field of elite athletes in today's race. We've named the defending champion Lawrence Chirono, and we have some of the top Kenyan and Ethiopian athletes who have chosen Amsterdam as their big city race for the autumn. There's one of the leading competitors, the defending champion Lawrence Chirono, set the course record of 2 hours 5 minutes and 9 seconds when winning here last year. There's Mule Wasahun, 25-year-old Ethiopian, actually celebrated his birthday in the hotel yesterday, set his best time last year when finishing 4th. Today will actually be his 3rd appearance in Amsterdam, having also finished 9th in 2016. And Mule finished 6th in Rotterdam earlier this year, and we've been hearing that he's in great shape coming into today's race. Well, I mentioned Lawrence Chirono, the defending champion. We caught up with him in Kenya a few weeks ago as he prepared for today's race. Good morning to you from Amsterdam for the 42nd edition of this famous big city marathon. It's pretty warm.
Last year, I came for my first time to make history in Amsterdam. For the first time, run my personal best. I like the course. It is flat and it is well organized.
The city is shining its finest colours in this beautiful early autumn Sunday morning.
Half of the race with my colleagues, when we were 3, it was a tough race for me.
Look at this! What a race! 26 miles of drama, and we still don't know who's going to win.
It was not obvious for me to win, but it was a determination. I just focused for the last from 35 kilometers. I just focused that maybe the race was no man's race, but at the end, I managed to win.
And history here in Amsterdam is about to be written again. It's going to be very, very close to the course record. It's still Lawrence Chirono with Norbert Kegen just behind him. He was the first to go to the front when the pacemakers dropped out, and he's going to do it here. What a magnificent run. Let's watch the clock. I think it's going to be a course record. Lawrence Chirono, with the performance of his life, wins the 42nd edition of the Amsterdam Marathon.
I want to improve my time again, to run faster than last year. That is my wish, to be the best again. Yes.
Kenyans. Another of the top Kenyans here is Gideon Kipketer, aged 26, one of the 5 sub-206 performers in the men's field. Ran his PB in Tokyo last year and also won the Mumbai Marathon 2 years ago in a course record time, where he originally started out just as the pacemaker. But the real big name in today's field is the Ethiopian Kenenisa Bekele, today running his 9th marathon, the 3rd fastest runner ever over the marathon, with his PB set in Berlin 2 years ago. Having run his marathon debut in Paris, where he opened with a 2:05:04 clocking. A real coup for the organisers to bring Kenenisa here to take on the defending champion. Here's Kenenisa talking at the press conference at the Royal Theatre Carré just a few days ago. Good morning to you from Amsterdam for the 42nd edition of this famous big city marathon.
What do you know about the course?
I knew the course was really flat and fast course, and a little bit windy because of the river side. Mostly the course was really nice.
What a race. 26 miles of drama, and we still don't know who's going to win.
It was really difficult to step to marathon because marathon training completely different. The big challenge is healthy-wise. If you are 100% healthy, the age doesn't matter. My preparation was going well, and I prepared well, and of course I'm ready to run around the course record.
Do you think you can do it, or run a world record?
I know Eliud Kipchoge and me in the same level on the track also. Even I'm better on the track race. Now he is better than me on marathon, so why not? I have chance to try this record, but will be not easy.
How well do you know him, Shirono?
Personally, I don't know him. He is winner of this Amsterdam Marathon.
What a magnificent run. Let's watch the clock. I think it's going to be a course record. Lawrence Chirono, with the performance of his life, wins the 42nd edition of the Amsterdam Marathon.
It was really a good race. He's a strong competitor. I saw the way he finishing the race. He was fresh and strong. Now I knew him very well. So we will see Sunday what's going on.
Well, today we'll see if at the age of 36 Kenenisa is right and age really does not matter. Also in the mix in the men's race, number 5 Laban Korea set his PB here in Amsterdam 2 years ago, having finished second 7 years ago in his debut, where he was very close behind the 4-time winner Wilson Chibet. Today is Korea's 4th start in Amsterdam, and he's run his fastest 5 marathons in Holland. Well, there's the leading Dutch athlete, Michel Butter. It's the Dutch Marathon Championships here in Amsterdam, and Butter will start as favourite. He finished 6th in his last marathon in New York 11 months ago.
In this we will introduce elite athletes. And first we will introduce a girl, 34-year-old, she's coming from Ethiopia, winner of 2 Olympic gold medals and 2 times world gold medals on 5.
Well, a packed stadium anxiously awaiting the start of the race, looking out no doubt for some of their own friends as well as the elite athletes at the front on the start line. There's number 1, Lawrence Chirono, alongside Kenenisa Bekele and Michel Butter. And Butter actually set his PB here in Amsterdam 6 years ago. Well, one of the big names in the women's race is Meseret Defar, wearing F7, today running her first marathon after an illustrious career on the track that brought her 2 Olympic titles and 2 world titles. There you can see on the right of your screen, F7. Sitting alongside me here in the commentary box is Chris Dennis, who commentates at many of these big city marathons. Chris, it's good to have you here with us.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, Richard. Hello, everybody. And there we can see the elite women being introduced to the crowd. There is the defending champion, Tedelic Bekele, age 27. And we've got some mouth-watering matchups, as Richard's been saying. It's always a pleasure to be here at the Amsterdam Marathon. Fast, friendly, and very, very flat indeed. And we're now just a few seconds away from getting this race underway. 15,000 runners like coiled springs waiting to get their races underway. Perfect conditions here. There is Mike Keegan, now known as Khan Osbilen, Michel Butter. There's so much interest around this race, so many layers. And I will predict, Richard, today that we could see if not 2, then at least 1 course record go. The atmosphere is building nicely, the organisation is perfect, the conditions are outstanding, and here we are. What a privilege to be in this iconic stadium, which, as Richard mentioned, hosted the Olympic Games 90 years ago. There is the official starter, Amit Kapoor, director and head of TCS Benelux. He will get the race underway. What an honour for him. And here we go. Don't drop it.
I just have to no.
Just pull the trigger, Amit, and we'll get this race underway. You can feel the atmosphere building beautifully. So, Lawrence Chirono, defending men's champion, course record holder, against arguably the greatest track athlete the world has ever seen, making his debut here in Amsterdam, his 9th marathon, the first time on the streets. And we're underway. The 43rd TCS Amsterdam Marathon is underway. We're up and running in Amsterdam, in the stadium, and 15,000 runners, 121 different nations are starting their journey, Richard, and what a sight we have in front of us.
Yeah, and the runners are very fortunate today to have great conditions. We've often had really good conditions here in Amsterdam. I think last year was a little bit on the warm side, but the elite athletes will be very pleased that it's dry, very little wind, and so they can seriously think about making an attack on the course record, which we've seen come down over the last 2 years. Course record set last year by Chirono, which was an improvement on the previous year set by Wanjiro 2 years ago.
Well, there we can see the pacemakers, and just to mark your card, there are 2 essential pacemaking groups for the men's race, aren't there, Richard? We've got the lead group there, who have been asked to go through halfway in 62.20, and the pacemakers you can see there wearing 80, 81 and 82 are Edwin Kiptu, Jacob Kedenden and Tefera Debele, respectively. All seasoned pacemakers doing a great job.
Yes, and I think it helps not only us and the viewers, but also the runners to know that they're marked in different vests and different colours, so the elite athletes who will be intending to finish the race will know that the pacemakers are only there to do a job and will drop out at some point in the second half of the race.
Yeah, they're hoping to get them through to at least 35 kilometres. I should say there's a second male pacemaking group 2, going through in 64 with pacemakers wearing 83 and 84. We'll keep you up to date, of course, and we'll bring you 5 kilometre splits. We've got the split times from the course record in both the men's and the women's race. As we've mentioned several times already, the men's course record set last year, 2:05.09, by the defending champion Lawrence Chirono, and the women's course record, well, you have to go a little bit further back, 2:21.09, set in 2012.
Yeah, we've talked about the battle between the Kenyans and the Ethiopians. I think in the women's edition of this race, it's the Ethiopians who've come out on top, but definitely in the men's race, it's the Kenyans who have been dominant, having won the men's edition of this race for the past 7 years. You have to go back to 2010 to find the last Ethiopian male runner to win here in Amsterdam. That was Getu Felika. And obviously going even further back to 2005 when the great Haile Gebrselassie won here in Amsterdam. But we've got a clutch of very strong Ethiopians in the men's race who will be out to bring the victory back to Ethiopia.
They will indeed. If you go back further than that, Richard, 14 of the last 16 years have been won by Kenyans here in Amsterdam in the men's race. Slightly more balanced in the women's race. In fact, more Ethiopian success in the women's race in recent years than for Kenya. But there we can see, centre of picture, Kenenisa Bikili, who is wearing number 2, tucked in nicely behind the pacemakers. We saw him, didn't we, Richard, in the hotel. Kenenisa looking very relaxed last night, big smile on his face as always. But I think you're right. I think we can see some dark horses. First glimpse there of Lawrence Chirono, who, of course, Richard, has the advantage, of course, of knowing this course very well indeed. As a former runner, how much of an advantage, having actually felt the tarmac, having felt the route under your shoes, how much does that count as an advantage?
I think it's very helpful. A lot of athletes in their training, they like to picture their races, and obviously those athletes who've run here in Amsterdam before will have been able to do that in the last 2 or 3 months as they've got ready for this race. And it is a feature of this race that many of the top athletes do like to come back. We mentioned Wilson Chibet, who won here 4 times, and Bernard Kipyego, who then succeeded Chibet as the champion here. Both of those athletes ran here in Amsterdam frequently, and it's no surprise that Lawrence Chirono is back to defend his title. We've mentioned Mule Wasserhoen here for his 3rd appearance in Amsterdam, and Laban Korea competing here for his 4th time. So many of the athletes in this leading group will know the course very well, and particularly this stretch of the course through Vondel Park.
Well, we just got a glimpse there of the leading elite athletes going through Vondel Park, one of the biggest park in the centre of Amsterdam, a wonderful green space. But behind them, thousands and thousands of good club runners, amateur runners, fun runners, fancy dress runners, all setting out on their journey, some of them running a marathon for the first time, each of them with an individual story, I'm sure, many of them raising good money for worthy causes and for charities. It's the cocktail of stories that makes big city marathon running so intoxicating. And of course you can run a city marathon pretty much anywhere in the world on any weekend.
But I think it is a real feature of this race that almost half of the field in the marathon is from foreign athletes, so it's a big attraction for international athletes, largely from European countries, but we've got representation from both North America, Latin America, South Africa, and even further than that. So it's a really popular international marathon destination.
Well, they're the elite men really getting into their stride. They're through into the second mile already. We will give you the first split as soon as we get it. They're just focusing in on number 3, Mule Wasserhoen, we mentioned, who has turned 25 yesterday. Lawrence Chirono there with that very high arm carriage. It's a feature, isn't it, Richard, of his running style. Somebody said to me a couple of days ago, it's actually almost, with all due respect, more reminiscent of a typical female running style, with the high arm carriage very close to the sides of the body.
Yes, we've got a range of styles, because in that leading group you've got 1 or 2 athletes who are well known for racing on the track. Amongst them, of course, Kenenisa Bekele, but you've got Yenyu Alimiru, another Ethiopian who ran in the Olympics on the track 6 years ago. There's the top Dutch athlete, looking very relaxed as he sets off through Vondel Park. We mentioned the Dutch Championship. There's number 14, Michel Butter, and just behind him, number 23, Edwin de Vries, 25 years old. And there's going to be a very interesting battle, I think, today to see who can bring home the Dutch marathon title. It's here in Amsterdam this year, as it will be for the next 2 years. And interestingly, the Dutch athletes don't have pacemakers, so it's a real head-to-head for them about winning the title.
Yeah, we were talking to some of the agents last night in the hotel, and they were saying that perhaps from the Dutch perspective they would just be running as a small group. Michel Butter, in actual truth, not in great shape this year, but it would be a real coup for him to take that Dutch title once again. Approaching 8 minutes of running here. That's a wonderful aerial view of Vondel Park. Great place to run and cycle and skate in the summer. Absolutely packed. Just a word about Kenenisa. He said in the run-up to this marathon, Richard, that he's never really felt that he's done entire justice to himself over the marathon. As you mentioned at the top of the programme, it's his 9th marathon overall, and he's the 3rd quickest in history. That's not a bad claim, is it? But he never feels that he's done himself justice. He's always had a slight niggle. What do you think realistically we can expect from Kenenisa today?
Well, I think Amsterdam is the perfect race for him to do today. I mean, he's had a bit of an up-and-down marathon career. We have to say he started out 4 years ago with his debut win in Paris, and 2 years ago recorded that incredibly fast time. But in between those 2 wins, he's had 1 or 2 DNFs, and he's had one or two performances that he probably isn't that happy about. I mean, even his last run in London earlier this year, where he finished 6th in a time of 2 hours and 8 minutes, that's not a time that he'd be very proud about. But if you talk to his manager, Jos Hermans, if you talk to Renata Canova, who's been working very closely with him, they will tell you that in so many of his marathons, he's only been 80-90% ready. He hasn't quite got his training right, or he's had a little niggle here and there. And I think even today, coming into Amsterdam, they feel that he's not right at the top of his game, and yet he can still produce something quite special because of the calibre of athlete that he is.
I was amused to read some of the comments made by Jos Hermans, his manager, his agent, who was saying, when asked what sort of shape is Kenenisa in, he said, well, he's okay. And then he added straight away, okay doesn't mean bad, it means it could be good. In fact, okay means it could be even very good. We just simply don't know with Kenenisa. There's no denying the talent, the raw talent that Kenenisa has. 3 times an Olympic champion, of course, we saw that, and 5 world titles on the track. And still they come over the start line. It's going to take quite some time to get these 15,000 runners over the start line here in the Olympic Stadium. And well, what a day of memories for all these people, starting and finishing in that iconic Olympic Stadium where we are based here.
Well, there's the leading group just coming out of Vondel Park. Remember that the race course retraces its steps on the way back, so these athletes will be coming back on these very streets and going back into Vondel Park for the last 2 or 3 kilometres of the distance in a couple of hours' time. But they're now back out onto the streets of Amsterdam, heading towards the city's famous Rijksmuseum.
Yeah, as a way of seeing and taking in the main tourist sites of Amsterdam. It's not a bad way to do it, by just going for a Sunday morning jog. Of course, one person's Sunday morning jog is another person's extraordinarily impressive elite performance. And will we see another course record today? We're into the 12th minute of running here. There's Michel Butter, the Dutch #1, just exiting Vondel Park and taking a right-hand turn. As Richard said, it's a beautiful description. It's pancake flat, it really is. There's very little elevation to talk about. The only real elevation to talk about is at around mile 23, when it rises by a mere 33 feet. There is the Rijksmuseum with the museum plain right in front, and we mentioned the European Championships, didn't we, held in Amsterdam a couple of years ago, and some of the field events were held, weren't they, in that very square.
Well, a great innovation of the course route a few years ago was to take the runners underneath the museum, and there some of the athletes are. The leading group are already out, having gone under the museum, and are back out onto the streets. So just 12 minutes of running. They'll soon be approaching the first main time check at 5 kilometres, get a sense of how fast they're running. There's 2 of the Dutch athletes, Edwin de Vries in number 23 and Michel Butter just behind him. And they're actually a few metres down on the first Dutch athlete, Ronald Schur.
Pacemakers doing a great job there, just 3 abreast, 80, 81 and 82. We shouldn't underestimate what an important job pacemaking is, getting it absolutely right. There we are. And all the main protagonists are there: Chirono, Bekele, Wassihun, Kipketer, Korir. And the list goes on. Özbilen, Dexisa. We should mention Solomon Dexisa as well. You saw him in Mumbai at the start of the year. He's unbeaten over the marathon in 2018. Yep,
24 years old. When he won in Mumbai, it was a very, very strong performance. Very tough course in Mumbai, and he saw off a very strong field to win there, and then won in Hamburg in April. So Solomon Dexisa just at the back of that group, wearing number 7. There's Mully Wassihun, number 3.
Now, he will have mixed memories, won't he, Richard, from this course last year. He finished in 4th place, but he had a fall late on in the race, around 38k. You were here commentating, and that could have cost him potentially a victory.
Yeah, he was right up in that leading group as they battled it out over the last few miles, and actually when he got to the finish he was really annoyed with himself for having tripped, and that critical point just 4 kilometres from the finish when they were really starting to slug it out. So Mulle Wasserhoen probably wants to make amends, certainly make it onto the podium this year, and maybe even improve on his best time set here, 2 hours 5 minutes and 39 seconds.
Kenenisa Bekele there wearing number 2, looking very businesslike indeed, just tucking in nicely behind the pacemakers. There's no real need for them to be shielded by the pacemakers. We have got a slight wind. It was predicted to be around 11 kilometres an hour. There's number 37 just going for the drinks, coming through 5 kilometres now in just outside 14:30. We'll bring you confirmation of exactly the 5 kilometre split as soon as we get it.
Yeah, there's the first drink station for the elite athletes. They've been briefed about exactly which table their drinks will be on. We saw one of the athletes at the back of that group having to stop and lose a few seconds. Probably didn't know exactly where his drink were, but the top athletes have all been told exactly which table their drinks will be, so there should be no confusion for them.
Well, the early indications are that this is a very breezy pace. I can tell you that Lawrence Chirono last year, when he set the course record, went through the first 5 kilometres in 14:59, so just under 15 minutes. And today the leading group, were comfortably inside that. There is the Dutch contingent, still led by Michel Butter and his compatriot Edwin de Vries.
Well, Chris, as we expected, it's quite a large group of Dutch athletes. Probably all of them with their eyes on Michel Butter, who will start as favourite today with a personal best time, 2 hours 9:58, but he's certainly not in that sort of shape today. He ran a half marathon just a couple of weeks ago in Breda, also in Holland, where he ran 64:50. So I think we were expecting a slower time for him today, and the other Dutch athletes are clustering around him and letting him do the pacemaking.
Number 81 there, one of the leading group of pacemakers, just trying to catch up with that leading group, maybe just lost a little bit of time at the drink station. Yes, all the individual drinks are numbered. We were at the technical meeting yesterday where there were very clear instructions on how to take the water bottle. There we are, there is Jacob Kandagor, one of the 3 leading pacemakers, just working his way back through the field there. But we can see we've got a group there, a leading group of around 10 or 12 athletes. All the main names are still in there. Very early stages, of course. And we can see there, number 81, Kandagor, just trying to rejoin his 2 pacemaking colleagues there at the front of the pack. So no harm done there. Just lost a little bit of ground, but Kenenisa Bekele wearing number 2, just centre of picture, just tucking in behind number 80.
Yeah, it's a striking feature of these big city races that the pacers themselves are world-class athletes. The 2 top pacers, number 80 and number 81, have both run half marathons in under the hour, so they should be comfortable operating at the 62.5 minute half marathon pace that the race organisers have asked for that leading group.
And talking of pacemakers who are elite athletes in their own right, we've only got to look at someone like Gideon Kipketer, number 4, who's in that leading pack, who won in Mumbai 2 years ago, who was actually pacing, got to 35 kilometres, and instead of dropping out as scheduled, carried on. He was feeling that good and actually went on to win the race. Into the 7th kilometre then. And they look pretty fresh, don't they? Those of you who are watching and perhaps new to big city marathons, typically the racing really doesn't start until well into the second half of the race. It's often quoted that the handbrake really starts to come off around 30-35 kilometres. So these are just really knocking off the early kilometres just to get themselves into their rhythm.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it, that Kenenisa seems to be the one who's keenest to be on the shoulder of the pacemakers. Just a few weeks ago when Mo Farah ran his amazing time in Chicago, he adopted a very different approach at the back of that leading group, and there were times in the race in Chicago when Mo Farah was a few seconds behind the leading group. Well, Kenenisa today is adopting a very different tactic, very much on the heels of the three pacemakers at the front and leading the group behind him.
Well, they're the business district of Amsterdam. It really does take in pretty much everything that Amsterdam has to offer, snaking around through the park, heading out east towards the port, and then down south. They'll be joining the River Amstel, and if there is any headwind, it does tend to be in that stretch between 50 and 20 kilometres, but today it will be pretty negligible, I have to say.
Yeah, this was a part of the course that was slightly altered a few years ago through the business district of Amsterdam, and it's a part of the course that the organisers can use to slightly adjust the distances depending on any minor course changes that need to be made. I think this year there was a very minor change that was required because of construction on part of the route. So it's always useful for a race organiser to have that kind of flexibility. But essentially the runners are heading south down to the banks of the River Amstel. They'll probably get there in around 15 minutes, around the 12-13 kilometre point.
And there it is, the most picturesque part of the course in my view, literally jogging along racing along the towpath in a southerly direction, as Richard said, and then out to Oudekerk, and then back over the bridge and going north again along the Amstel. Some wonderful riverside properties that we will see very shortly indeed. But Amsterdam consistently in the top 10 fastest marathons in the world, and it really does attract high caliber. It's just outside the World Marathon Majors group of marathons, of course, but as you mentioned at the top of the programme, to attract an athlete of the caliber of Kenenisa Bekele, and of course in the women's race Meseret Defar, who's making her full marathon debut today, those are world-class athletes on the track, and in Kenenisa's case, of course, world-class in the marathon distance himself. So a real coup for the TCS Amsterdam Marathon to have attracted athletes of that caliber.
Yes, and there's different ways you can categorise which is the fastest marathon in the world, but interestingly, Lawrence Chirono's winning time here last year, 2 hours 5 minutes and 9 seconds, was the 5th fastest marathon time in 2017. So as you're saying, Chris, Amsterdam definitely regarded as one of the world's fastest marathons. The fastest marathon in the world usually considered to be Berlin, and that was emphasised again this year with the world record being set there by Eliud Kipchoge just over a month ago. I think you were there, Chris, to see that. It was a very, very special occasion. A real honour to be there and see Eliud Kipchoge really rip up the record book. I think the common feeling is that that's a time that will stand for many, many years to come, and of course it's got everybody salivating about whether that will take us a little bit closer to the sub-2 hour marathon. Will that ever happen? It's a discussion point that, of course, that's been going on for many, many years. We're about 600 metres in distance from a sub-2 hour marathon. Well, interestingly, that's the pacemaker number 81, Jacob Kendegor, very experienced pacemaker. It looks like he is struggling, and that's very unusual to be struggling so early on in the race. Looks as though, oh yes, he's definitely in difficulty, and he's still working hard to try and get back to the front of that group, but no, he's not going to do it. So an injury has put paid to his attempts to be the pacemaker, which means that there will be only 2 pacemakers for those leading athletes. Well, that's a real shame. He's going to give it a go, but he's holding his lower back, as you can quite clearly see there, and they're barely 8 kilometres into the race. So the main 3 pacemakers now reduced to 2, and that will put a little bit of extra responsibility on the shoulder of Edwin Kiptu and Tarifa de Bela. Well, they will be more than equal to that. Well, there's a big group of largely Dutch athletes, 7 athletes, and Michel Butter is in that group. Number 23 at the back of the group, Edwin de Vries. Also in that group, Ronald Schreur. And we're back now with the leaders. There's about a dozen athletes. This is the second group of Kenyan and Ethiopian athletes. They're chasing a time of around 2 hours and 8 minutes. And they've got their own pacemaker, number 83, Victor Koske. So we've got a number of different groups at the front of this race. There's Michel Butter, number 14, leading the Dutch athletes. And this is the front of the race, led by Edwin Kiptu, wearing number 80, and the Ethiopian Terefa Debele, wearing 82.
So we've lost one of the pacemakers, but fortunately, with all due respect to him, we haven't lost any of the main elite men. They're still all in there, looking very, very comfortable indeed through 8.5 kilometres, and we'll bring you a 10-kilometre split. And just a chance to enjoy the autumnal colours of this wonderful, wonderful city. It's a gorgeous time of the year to be running in Amsterdam. We see the city at its finest. It's very still today. You can see from the trees there's barely a breeze. It's pretty much perfect conditions. Not too cool when we arrived in the Olympic Stadium earlier today. It will, of course, increase in temperature by a degree or two, but it really is nigh on perfect.
And there's a great atmosphere in Amsterdam this weekend. It's the start of a holiday week for the Amsterdam public. There's a big dance festival weekend on, lots of stages around the city, and there's a real buzz in the city. Not only the 45,000 participants taking part in today's races, we've got the marathon this morning, the half marathon this afternoon, the 8-kilometre race goes off later this morning, and in addition to all the runners in town, there are thousands of other people, thousands of tourists who've come to Amsterdam for the dance festival. So a great atmosphere, and as you say, Chris, great weather for all the events on offer this weekend.
Lawrence Chirono there, left of picture, just staying out of trouble, just tracking Kenenisa Bekele, and still very early stages, but I think you're right, it's interesting to see as they go through 9 kilometres, interesting to see the fact that Kenenisa Bekele just is insisting almost in making sure that he's in pole position at the head of that group. That, to me, is a bit of a statement, I think, that Kenenisa is making there. We can see on the right of picture the runners who are going in the opposite direction, and it's great for them to get a glimpse of the elite men, some of the best runners in the world, and you can hear one of the many bands on the course that adds to the atmosphere. Confirmation coming up, of course, at 10 kilometres, but for me, Richard, I think they're comfortably within course record pace.
Yes, we would expect them to go through 10 kilometres around 29:40. The splits that were being asked for by the pacemakers around that 14:50 for every 5 kilometres, and a halfway time they're aiming for of around 62:20, which is obviously course record pace.
Yes, Lawrence Chirono last year went through in 62:51 when he set the now course record. And of course we had that thrilling finish, sorry Richard, we had that thrilling finish we saw at the top of the programme, literally into the stadium. 2 athletes still in contention, battling it out in the final 200 metres.
Well, Chirono running now on the shoulder of Kenenisa Bekele, and interestingly they ran their last marathon together in London 6 months ago. Kenenisa was 6th and Chirono was 7th. Not in their best times. Again, we saw in London Eliud Kipchoge winning another of his London titles, his 3rd marathon title in April. Well, Kenenisa, he ran 2 hours, 8 minutes and 51 seconds in finishing 6th, and Chirono was a further 30 seconds back in 7th place.
So just about a minute or so away from the 10-kilometre split. Kenenisa, well, the Netherlands, a very special place for him. This is his first appearance in the Amsterdam Marathon, but you can see there it was in Hengelo in the same country that he set his world record, one of his 2 world records in the 5,000 metres. He's still the world record holder on the track for 5 and 10,000. And the other in Brussels there, you can see. So the 10-kilometre mark coming up, you can see the blue arch, which is beckoning. So we hit 10 kilometres in just outside 29:08. So they are well inside course record pace. And just, Richard, for comparison's sake, we mentioned the world record set in Berlin just a few weeks ago, Eliud Kipchoge. Well, he went through 10 kilometres on that day in 29:01. So they're only marginally outside world record pace. This is keen.
They are going very fast, and Chirono, when he set his course record here just a year ago, he went through that same point in 29:53, so they're more than 40 seconds up on last year's time. Now, in some ways, that's not always a good thing to be starting so fast, unless, of course, they're seriously intent on lowering the course record by a minute or so. So they're very much ahead of course record schedule. That's the second group of athletes. You can see the pacemaker, number 83.
Yeah, that's Victor Koski wearing 83, and 84 just obscured by runner number 18. He's at the head of that group. There he is, number 84, the second pacemaker, Silas Rotic. They were at the technical meeting yesterday, doing a fine job. That's pretty good pacemaking ratio, isn't it? 2 runners and 2 pacemakers. That's almost individual pacemaking.
Yes, I suppose the key thing there is that most of the top athletes, they want to have a go at winning this race, and so even if they're operating a little bit faster than they would do in a lesser race, they've decided to go with the leading group with the 2 pacemakers. And that second group, they're unlikely to feature or certainly get on the podium when we get nearer to the finish.
Just saw a glimpse there of Michel Butter just dropping off the back of that third group of predominantly Dutch runners. So essentially we've got the leading group. There we are. We can see the leading group still around 10 or 12 strong. All the big names are in there. Chirono, the defending champion, Bekele, Wasihun, Kipkeita, Correa, Özbilen, Dexisa. And then we've got the second group. There is that leading group there. Starting to spread out a little bit. There is Özbilen wearing number 6. Mike Keegan, most of us still refer to him as Mike Keegan, but if we're being strict, he's now Kaan Keegan Özbilen. Transferred his nationality to Turkey in 2015, wearing number 6 there. 32 years old now, and a real talent. A former training partner, I think, of Mo Farah.
Well, he's trained with all the greats, I think, going back 12 or 13 years when he was running for Kenya. He was running alongside Eliud Kipchoge, John Kibowen, and started out, as you say, Chris, as a 5,000 metre runner, and over the years has gradually worked his way up from 5,000 to 10,000 to the half marathon, and now sees himself very much as a marathon runner, although he did have a full track season this year, ran the European Championships in Berlin over 10,000 and 5,000 metres.
So we're through 10 kilometres comfortably into the second half hour of the race, and the now 2 pacemakers doing a fine job, and Kenenisa Bekele there hasn't moved an inch really, is just right in there, tucked in behind the 2 pacemakers. There you can see left of picture Gideon Kipkeita. We made reference to him. His 2 best performances, incidentally, Kipkeita there left of picture, both in Tokyo this year. Earlier on finished 4th, and last year 2017 also in Tokyo finished in 2nd place, and that's where he set his lifetime best of 2:05.51. So he's got fond memories of Tokyo.
I think 2017 was by far his best year in his career. He also finished 5th in the World Championships, just 1 place behind Callum Hawkins, and then went on to Berlin just over 12 months ago, but didn't fare so well there, dropped out of that race. But as you say, Chris, has come back in 2018 with a very strong performance in Tokyo. So there's Khan Keegan Osbilen. Like Kenenisa, started out as a track athlete, and we've got a number of athletes in that leading group with very strong track credentials. Keegan's, or sorry, should I say Osbilen's fastest time over 5,000 metres, 12:58, and 27:03 over 10,000 metres.
Just got a glimpse there also of number 5, Laban Correa. We featured him at the top of the programme as well. Very distinctive forward lean. He's a slightly shorter, more diminutive figure, but a really, really accomplished marathon runner now. Finished second here on his debut in 2011, so look out also for number 5 there, who's in that leading group.
Yeah, and Chris, you mentioned about how athletes like certain courses. Well, Correa this is his 4th appearance in Amsterdam, and his fastest 5 marathon performances have all been in Holland. 3 in Amsterdam and 2 in Rotterdam. He set his personal best in Rotterdam, and he went back there this year and ran a very fast time, 2 hours 5 minutes and 58 seconds, and finished 4th earlier this year. Well, we're going back to the Dutch race, the race for the Dutch marathon title, and Michel Butter, number 14, is right in the middle of that group, just running behind one of his compatriots, number 26, Stijn de Fulda. It's a very big group of Dutch athletes. Number 22, Geert Jan Vasink, has a best time of 2 hours 17. Number 23, Edwin de Vries, has a best time of 2:17:48. But that group of Dutch athletes is some way behind the leading Dutch athlete. So we've got a out-and-out Dutch leader at the moment, number 21, Ronald Schreur, 34 years of age, ran his best time here in Amsterdam 6 years ago. So Schreur making a very definite bid for glory in the race to be the Dutch marathon champion here in Amsterdam.
That's a bold move, isn't it? And he's running solo, Richard, and I wonder how expensive that could be. He has no company whatsoever. He's rather stranded in no man's land between this leading group. He's off the second group with the pacemakers we've already seen, but he's well ahead, as we saw there from the motorbike, showing us the distance that he leads from the rest of his compatriots. That could get very comfortable. There he is, Ronald Schreur.
Yes, and I think it'll become even harder, that feeling of running solo, when he gets onto the banks of the River Amstel in a few minutes' time. This is the turnaround point we were mentioning earlier, where the organisers can either add or take away a little bit of distance each year if need be. We're just beyond the 12-kilometre point, and it's at this point that the runners start to head south, and in a few minutes' time they will be on the banks of the river on the out and back section out towards Ouderkerk. There's about 12 athletes in that leading group behind the 2 pacemakers, and you can see on the right of your screen Lawrence Chirono with the high arm action in the orange vest, and right alongside Kenenisa Bekele, a relative newcomer to the marathon, Yenyao Alimiru, running his second marathon here in Amsterdam.
Yeah, real rival of the likes of Mo Farah on the track, on the Diamond League circuit for many, many years. But there is Lawrence Chirono with that very, very recognisable high arm carriage. Great economical running style. And just to his right, Muli Wasuhun, you mentioned, who fell late on in the race last year, but still managed to finish in 4th. He'll be learning, I'm sure, a lesson from that. But 13 kilometres in. Richard, what would your early assessment be of Kenenisa?
Well, I think he looks very comfortable, and I mean, Kenenisa, we know he's capable of something very, very fast. He's already run 2 hours, 3 minutes, and probably at some point in the next few years, I'm sure he'd like to have a serious attempt at Kipchoge's world record. So you would expect that he would be feeling comfortable at this pace. They're operating at around 2:04, 2:04:30 pace at the moment, and with a personal best of 2 hours 3:03. If he's anywhere near top form, he should be feeling all right, and he's looking all right, but it is still very much early days.
Yeah, approaching 14 kilometres. We have seen, you mentioned a couple of disappointing results from Bekele in recent years. We have seen him fade perhaps in the middle to 2/3 of a race and then find a sort of second wind. Thinking of London a couple of years ago when he seemed down and out and then recovered very, very impressively indeed to finish in second place. So here we can see the Amstel beckons, and there'll be a sharp right turn very shortly, and that will take them alongside the River Amstel for the next, well, good 10-15 kilometres. It's a wonderfully picturesque part of the course, flanked by the river on the left-hand side and lots of boats, and then on the right of the road you can see some wonderful waterside houses. There we go, there's the right-hand turn, and we're now on the banks of the Amstel.
Well, Amsterdam is a city that's built on rivers and canals, and Chris, you mentioned some of the beautiful parks in the city, Vondel Park, Rembrandt Park, and the runners now quite near to the big wooded area, Amsterdamse Bos. So I know the residents of Amsterdam love their city, and one of the reasons they love their city is because of the water.
Well, there'll be plenty of chance for the runners here to enjoy the water to their left. Not that they'll be particularly concentrating on that. There is the Dutch group a little bit further back. We've already seen that Ronald Schreur, just to remind you, is the leading Dutch runner. He's way ahead of this main group of Dutch runners. There is Michel Butter in second place within the Dutch Championship race, the race within the race here, and just behind him then 4 or 5 Dutch compatriots.
Yes, often Amsterdam is a selection race for the Dutch athletes, either towards an Olympic Games or World Championships. This year it's actually not serving as a selection race, it's simply a national marathon championship, which is why nearly all of Holland's top marathon runners, certainly in the men's race, are here today to try and win that title. One of the Dutch athletes who is not here is Abdi Negea, who holds the Dutch national record, which he actually set here in Amsterdam a year ago. He ran 2 hours, 8 minutes and 21 seconds. And both Negea and Butter were hoping to be in Berlin earlier this summer, the European Championships, but because of injury they didn't start there. And in fact, I think they were then hoping to run in Berlin a month ago. They weren't ready for that, and finally Butter decided, well, if I can't run European Championships and I can't run in Berlin, let's go back to Amsterdam, a course I know well, and he's back here. Negea, however, is still sidelined with injury, so...
Well, these are pictures being brought to you from the River Amstel, as you can see from our boat camp. Wonderful, wonderful pictures here. The runners running south along the Amstel with the palette of colours, the artist's colours provided by the trees in early autumn here. And we're approaching 15 kilometres, and Richard, it continues to be a really breezy pace here, very, very impressive indeed, comfortably inside course record pace. 44:48 was Chirono's time at 15 kilometres, and we are just a couple of 100 metres from the 15 kilometre mark, and we'll bring you that 15 kilometre split as soon as we get it. But There, that leading pack of runners, Laban Courier just off the back of that.
And there's our first glimpse of the flyboarders. We see this every year, a great feature of the Amstel River. As you say, Chris, the athletes themselves won't be too interested in what's happening out on the river. There's a few boats, we can see a rowing boat out there, but the flyboarders enjoying the space on the river.
Well, unofficially going through 15 kilometres in 44:02, and that is 46 seconds inside course record pace. And they're only about 20 seconds outside world record pace. The world record, of course, set literally a few weeks ago by Eliud Kipchoge in Berlin.
Yes, I think it's going to be important how long Edwin Kipchoo, the leading pacemaker there at the front of that group, can stay in the race. Kipchoo is a very experienced pacemaker, but more importantly, he's also in very good shape. He ran a very fast half marathon in Copenhagen just over a month ago, 59:28, which was just 2 seconds off his personal best for the half marathon. So if Kipchoo can stay in the race well beyond halfway, maybe even as far as 30 kilometres, then that would set up these athletes for a very fast time. But I think it's always important for the leading group to have pacemakers for as long as possible into the second half of the race. And there, the athletes we see taking their third bottle just beyond the 15-kilometre point. Very important for them to take on water early in the race. Many of the drinks will have carbohydrates in them.
It's something very, very important indeed, as you say, Richard, and you've only got to ask Mo Farah, who got his drink intake horribly wrong at the London Marathon when he was running there for the second time. It just showed the inexperience, really, of not having done that. Running at really high speed, picking up the right water bottle, and it caused all sorts of confusion and arguably cost him quite a bit of time. He seemed to do much better in Chicago a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think it is something that runners learn from experience, but it strikes me that athletes, they spend so many weeks and months preparing for races and training so hard and talking about all sorts of tactics and approaches to training, that the importance of taking drinks is often overlooked. And I think that's why athletes, we often see some of the world's top athletes making mistakes when they get to the races. And I don't know if you saw that, Chris, Kenenisa just making a sign as though, I'm not sure that he picked up his bottle at that drink station.
Well, that would be worrying for Kenenisa, because each athlete has his or her, in the women's race, their own individually prepared bottles, and of course the bottle has the race number on it. There is number 5, Laban Courier, who just dropped off the back of that pack, and we saw actually number 4, Gideon Kipketer, just surge to the front as they approached the drink station, just to make sure that he was in pole position and wasn't going to get into any difficulty. And there is Kenenisa trying to get a message through to the motorbike to say, no, it's just interesting to see. Well, Jos Hermans, he's talking to Jos Hermans, his manager there. We weren't able to just dip in to find out what he was saying, but I think you're right, Richard. There is a suggestion that Kenenisa didn't pick up the right water, the right drink at that last station.
Yeah, and I think he's showing a little bit of frustration, isn't he? Because the athletes are told the day before the race, yesterday, they were all given very clear instructions as to where their drinks would be positioned, at which table, and some of the athletes even have people at those tables handing out the drinks, and it looks to me as though Kenenisa missed his drink at 50 kilometres.
Here is the leading Dutch athlete going through 15 kilometres, Ronald Schreur, who is still running solo behind that second group. There is the second group with the pacemakers, and Ronald Schreur is still in splendid isolation ahead of his Dutch compatriots, but well behind this second group. But
it may be that he's not that far behind that second group. Well, if he is within sight of that second group, he is really operating at a faster pace than he's ever run before, because that second group, they're aiming for around 2 hours and 8 minutes, and Schreuer's fastest time at the marathon, only 2 hours and 16 minutes. Well, that's exactly what we were talking about. Kenenisa very concerned about his drinks and shouting to his manager Jos Hermans, and somewhere along the way, I don't know whether that's from another athlete, but he's picked up a drink. Now, the rules about using the drink of another athlete is that fellow athletes can hand drinks to their competitors, their fellow competitors. The drink must not be handed to an athlete by a pacemaker. So it's possible that one of Kenenisa's compatriots passed Kenenisa a drink. He's just dropped that bottle, but I'm sure he'll be happy to have at least taken some fluid at this stage of the race.
Yeah, he's finally got his fluid on board, and he'll feel a lot happier about that. Often it's psychological, isn't it, as they go through 17 kilometres, Richard, there. Often it's psychological. It's just something that you don't want to be worried about. He may not be feeling as though he needs the fluid intake now, but of course the reason they're taking on fluid so regularly in these early start stages of the race is precisely because they need to draw on that in the latter stages.
Yes, that's right. I mean, if it was a 20-kilometre race or even a 30-kilometre race, drinks would really not be that important. It's those last 5-7 kilometres when they're running low on carbohydrate and fuel that is what the drinks are for now. The interesting thing now that we can see is that there's only one pacemaker left for that leading group. Originally we started with 3. We saw the Kenyan Kendagor drop out, and it looked to me as though the Ethiopian pacemaker Terefa Debele is no longer in that group. Well, if he is in the group, he's no longer doing the work that's been given to him. But it seems to me as though it's just the Kenyan Edwin Kiptu in the orange who is the sole pacemaker, which is a little bit worrying because he's got a big task on his shoulders to take this group through to certainly to halfway and hopefully further to 30 kilometres.
Well, it's a huge responsibility on the shoulders of Edwin Kiptu, and if that's right, I think you're right, Richard. I think we've lost the second pacemaker. So we have one pacemaker and 12 athletes, all relying on his sensible pacing judgment. So far he's doing a fine job. Just to remind you, they're comfortably inside course record pace. We're not even at halfway yet. You can see we've just gone through 17.5 kilometres. We'll bring you the 20k split very shortly, and then the halfway point. That will take us. That will tell us a lot about what perhaps we can expect in the second half of the race. Just looking at the leaves on the trees, Richard, for any sign of wind. We were told to expect a southerly wind of around 11 kilometres an hour. It looks as though we've got barely a breath of wind at all.
Yes, I don't operate in kilometres an hour, but I think that 11 kilometres an hour is not much wind. And if you work on the Beaufort scale, I think it's 2 on the Beaufort scale. But I think, Chris, the most significant thing, as you say, is that there doesn't seem to be much movement in the trees. So as the runners head south, hopefully they're not feeling much of a headwind. If there is any wind, they'll be feeling it into their faces now, and then when they reach the turnaround point at Ouderkerk in just over 2 kilometres time, they would have the wind behind them.
Very impressed with your reference to the Beaufort scale. That's good knowledge, very good knowledge. There we can see number 12, Kipsambu, left of picture. We haven't seen much of him, but he's been tucked into that leading group from the word go. Another athlete we should also reference, number 15, just disappearing from shot there, number 15, Jonathan Courier, who's been part of Patrick Sang's training group. Patrick Sang, of course, who's probably best known for being the coach of Eliud Kipchoge, the world marathon record holder. Word is that Jonathan Correa, Richard, has been very, very impressive in training.
Yes, I mean, I find it very interesting that Patrick Sang, who, as you say, Chris, has been coaching Eliud Kipchoge for the past 15 years, has now built up a very strong group, and Jonathan Correa decided he wanted to join that group and learn from them. So his preparation has been done alongside the world's best marathon runners. There's Gideon Kipkeita. We mentioned his win in Mumbai just 2 years ago. I would say that ranks as his best ever marathon performance. Course record in Mumbai, although since then he set a personal best time of 2 hours 5 minutes and 51 seconds in Tokyo. Another athlete actually to have joined Patrick Sang's training group is Khan Keegan Osbilan. So a very big group, and all those athletes wanting to learn from the world's best. Kipchoge obviously now on a bit of a rest period, having set his world record in Berlin just over a month ago.
Yeah, the work ethic in that group is extraordinary, and Eliud Kipchoge well known for his humility as well. He mucks in with the training group. He could live in real luxury just a few kilometers down from the training base there, but he insists on training and staying locally with the rest of his group and taking his turn in duties such as cleaning out the bathrooms and the bedroom areas. It's all part of the mentality that has taken him to be the very best in the world. And it was nice to hear Kenenisa Bekele acknowledging that Eliud Kipchoge is a better marathon runner than him, but of course on the track, although they both moved on from the track now, the difference was not that great.
Yes, and I think Kenenisa still has that confidence that he can at least make a serious attack on Kipchoge's world record because he has those better track credentials. I think the critical thing for all of these world-class big names is how long can they keep going, and we heard Kenenisa in his press conference talk about his age and rather confidently saying age does not matter, but when you've been around for as long as Kenenisa has, then you have to think that age, or certainly the number of years at the top and the number of years of hard training, will be significant.
Yeah, it's generally recognised that there's a finite number of marathons in any runner, however talented they may be. He's running his 9th marathon here today. We're approaching 20 kilometres. They're still comfortably inside course record pace. The figure we're looking for is 59.52, which was Lawrence Chirono's 20k split from last year.
So here's the turnaround point. The athletes will come across the bridge. This is a well-known place in Amsterdam known as Oude Kerk. It's an old church. That's what the town means, or it's the village. The village of Oude Kerk marking the turnaround point, and the athletes will now make another sharp left-hand turn and come back on the south bank of the River Amstel.
Well, that will feel good, won't it? Psychologically, they know they've now passed the most southerly point of the entire course, and if there had been any headwind at all, it now, of course, translates into a slight tailwind. And the atmosphere, as you can hear, on the course building all the time, and we're just a few hundred metres now from the 20-kilometre mark, and most importantly, then very quickly after that we'll be hitting the halfway point. And to remind you, this leading group, which started out with 3 pacemakers, now reduced to 1, Edwin Kiptu, has been tasked with getting them through the halfway point in 62.20, and that is comfortably within course record pace from last year.
Yes, Chirono went through, as you say, Chris, he went through in 62.51, but ran his second half much faster, so ran a negative split, and I think the reason he ran a negative split last year was because he was pushed all the way to the line by the second placed athlete Norbert Keegan, who's not in today's race. So fast times are partly to do with how good the pacemaking is, but it's also to do with how fierce the competition is at the end of the race.
Well, here we are approaching 20 kilometres. Let's keep an eye on the clock. And they go through in 58.58, and they are almost a minute inside course record pace. In fact, they're sitting almost exactly between world record pace and the course record. They're about a minute off Kipchoge's world record from Berlin, but about just under a minute inside Chirono's course record set just 12 months ago. But the rider, as Richard has just said, is the negative split that Chirono ran last year, and that's why, Richard, we need this group to stay together for as long as possible. We're still 12 athletes in contention. If we can get that down to even 4 or 5 at 35 kilometres, then the course record has a great chance of being broken again.
Yes, what we've often seen in Amsterdam is the pacemaker staying in the race till 30 kilometres, and we really wouldn't expect Edwin Kiptoo to go further than that, and then it's at that point with 12 kilometres to run that the race really starts. And if that group, as you say, Chris, can be big enough that they can help each other keep the pace going before they get back over the Amstel and head back towards Vondelpark, then we could see a really fast time. But it's still very early days, and you can already see a few gaps starting to open up, and I think that's simply because of the speed at which they're running. And I think the person who's largely responsible for that pace, as well as the pacemaker, is Kenenisa, really keen to stay on the heels of Kiptoo. This is the second group. That second group started out as a group of 4, now as a group of 3, but I think their pacemaker, Victor Koske, is still with them.
So approaching halfway, and of course we should mention that Kenenisa Bekele, of course, has the advantage of knowing that his personal best is fully 2 minutes quicker than anybody else in the field. That was the third fastest time of all time, set a couple of years ago in Berlin, 2:03.03, an extraordinary time set by Bekele. But of course, anything can happen on race day. And as you say, further evidence of that group starting to splinter. There is Robert Chomosin, the Kenyan, who is just starting to feel the pace, feel the pinch as we head towards the halfway point.
Yes, well, his best time, 2 hours and 8 minutes, and the leaders are operating at a much faster pace. So, as you say, Chris, probably the first casualty from this big group. At the turnaround point, there were 12 athletes, and gradually, I think we'll see as they head back towards the city, well, we can already see Laban Korir just a few metres down. I don't know whether he's deliberately just staying off that leading group or whether he too is starting to struggle. But just another reflection on the great Kenenisa Bekele. Here is the halfway point. Well, that is a very, very fast time, isn't it? Through halfway in just over 62 minutes.
Yeah, around 62.08. So again, comfortably maintaining about 45-second cushion inside course record pace. So we are now into the second half of the race, and that group of 12 has been whittled down to at least 11. Laban Korir, as Richard mentioned, perhaps another potential struggler at the back, and this is where the pacing will continue, and Edwin Kiptoo is doing a fine job. We need him in the race for as long as possible. If Edwin Kiptoo can keep in to at least 30 kilometres, that would be good. And we can see number 5, Laban Korir, just keeping in touch with that leading group. There are the first 5, with Kenenisa where he has been, right on the shoulder of the pacemaker right from the word go.
Well, in effect, there are 5 Kenyans and 5 Ethiopians and 1 Turkish athlete, although he's formerly from Kenya. So, as we expected, it's a battle between Ethiopia and Kenya. Kenenisa wearing number 2. Very much the leader of the Ethiopian pack, both morally and psychologically, and today we've seen him always at the front, always on the heels of the pacemaker Edwin Kiptoo. But this is Kenenisa's first appearance in Amsterdam, so unlike some of the other Ethiopians in that leading group, he won't know the course quite as well. But he's running alongside Lawrence Chirono.
Well, Chirono there, right of picture, looking very, very comfortable indeed, as is Kipkeita, Gideon Kipkeita. Huge respect, of course, for Kenenisa from the other athletes around him.
I think one interesting thing of the top athletes, or certainly the athletes when they get to the top of the tree in marathon running, is that they reduce the number of marathons that they do. I mean, Chirono 3 years ago was running 3 marathons a year, but this year, in the 12 months since he won here in Amsterdam, he's only run 1 marathon. That was in London, and since then, for the last 6 months, his attention has been focused on this race. And I think it is true that the world's top athletes like Kipchoge, like Kenenisa, they choose to run just 2 marathons a year. That's probably the best way of preparing properly and then recovering well from each race.
Yeah, Chirono running his 13th marathon today at the age of 30. Just to remind you, 5 of this field have run under 2:06. Here's the second group approaching the halfway point. So they are a good 4 minutes behind that leading group. And of course the interesting gap that we should keep an eye on is the gap between that second group with the pacemakers and Ronald Schreur, the leading Dutchman, who was, we felt, approaching and perhaps closing in.
Yes, I think that explains a little bit why Schreur might have had those Kenyan athletes in his sight, because that second group they're operating at about 2:11 pace, and Schreur, well, this is one of the Ethiopian athletes, Tadu Abata, just appearing here in Amsterdam for his first time, has a best time of 2 hours 6:54 from Hamburg earlier this year, so this is only his second marathon. We heard he was in great shape coming into the race, but he's now starting to struggle. He's in a very strong training group coached by Haji Ajilo, but clearly going through a bad patch at this point in the race. That leading group down to 10 athletes.
Yeah, down to 10, still led by Edwin Kiptoo in the orange vest there, doing an absolutely sterling job, shouldering the responsibility on his own now. And that side-on shot there giving a wonderful illustration of just how quickly these runners are travelling. Jonathan Korea is still in there, and apart from the Turkish athlete, Kenyan-born Özbilen, it's East Africa all the way. As you would expect, there is Özbilen left of picture there wearing number 6, but Kenenisa, just looking at the body language, still looking very relaxed. Just confirmation of his track credentials. 3 Olympic titles, and of course we should also mention Meseret Defar in the women's race today. She's a 2-time Olympic champion as well, and it's just so nice, isn't it? A little bit of symmetry, Richard, in this race, that both the defending champions in the marathon, in Tadej Bekele and Lawrence Chirono, defending their titles against legends on the track.
Yeah, and you know, the striking thing about both Defar and Kenenisa Bekele is that they've been competing internationally now for almost 20 years. Kenenisa Bekele started his international career in Belfast in 1999 at the World Cross Country Championships. So there's the leading Dutch athlete, Ronald Schreur, going through, well, very, very close to what would be his marathon. Best time 2 hours 16 and 19 seconds is his best time, set here in Amsterdam, and he went through the halfway in 68, just outside 68 minutes. So Schreur looking good and could even run a best time, but his eyes very much on a Dutch marathon title, which is being contested here in Amsterdam. But yes, just going back to Kenenisa's record over the past 20 years, started out on the country as a junior at the World Cross Country, then won his first senior World Cross Country title in Dublin in 2002, and went on to win so many titles at World Cross Country, both at 4K and 12K. I think he won 6 12K titles at World Cross Country, and then, as you said, Chris, really made his name as a track runner, winning those 3 Olympic titles and breaking world records over 5 and 10,000 metres, and then moved up to first the half marathon in 2013 before running his first marathon in Paris 4 years ago.
So approaching 24 kilometres, and we have still a group of 10 tracking as a bunch there. The main pacemaker, Edwin Kiptu. Kenenisa Bekele there, like a limpet, just sticking to the shoulder of the pacemaker. Lawrence Chirono there has just kept out of trouble, keeping quite a low profile. Wasihun, who was in the top 4 last year, centre of picture there, also looking very comfortable indeed. Kipkeita, Courier, Özbilen, Dexisa, they're all there, just clicking off these kilometres metronomically.
Yes, well, at least 4 of the athletes in that leading group come from a track background. Kenenisa's track background is well known, but also Mule Wasahun started out as a track athlete. He won the Ethiopian National 10,000 metre championship and then went on to represent Ethiopia in the African 10,000 metre championships. So he's another athlete with track pedigree. Also Yenyao Alimiru ran for Ethiopia in the 2012 Olympics over 5,000 metres, and then we've also mentioned Khan Keegan Özbilen. So a lot of athletes there with very fast times over 5 and 10,000 metres, and they're running alongside some other runners who are more out-and-out marathon runners, but with a lot more experience than them over the marathon distance.
Well, the runners approaching 25 kilometres. You can see they're going under one of the main motorways in and out of Amsterdam, the ring road. They'll go under there and they'll hang a slight right, and then eventually in the next kilometre or so they will leave the Amstel and head almost due south.
Yes, this is probably the quietest section of the marathon route for the next 5 kilometres. As you say, Chris, they're leaving the river and they're heading down to one of Amsterdam's business districts in the southeast corner of the city. And so for the next 15 or 20 minutes before they come back into the city centre and back towards the Royal Theatre and the Amstel Hotel over the River Amstel, it's going to be relatively quiet. I'm not sure whether there'll be any bands on the course on this section of the route, but the athletes will be thinking very much about staying relaxed, staying behind the pacemaker, and just gearing themselves up for that final quarter, the toughest part of the race, once the pacemaker drops out.
Well, they continue to pile on the pressure here. The pacing has been absolutely spot on here. They're inside the required pace, the requested pace of 62.20 at the halfway stage. To remind you, went through halfway in 62.08. They're approaching 25 kilometres. And again, just as a reference point, Lawrence Chirono's course record last year, set on this very course, 1:14.43. As we get another glimpse of Ronald Schreur, still doing it the hard way, still running solo, and still looking pretty comfortable.
Yeah, he still looks as though he's got a good rhythm going. We don't yet know how far he is in front of that group of Dutch runners. So there they are.
Yeah, 25 kilometres going through in 1:13.48. So again, they continue to be just inside a minute inside course record. About 55 seconds.
Yes, well, we talk about course record pace for a lot of this race, but what the critical split is going to be is that final 5 kilometres, final 7 kilometres really, from the 35 kilometre point onwards, which was where last year we saw that very fierce battle, not just between Chirono and Keegan, but between 4 athletes: Abraham Kiptum, Keegan, Chirono and Mulle Wasserhoen. So if that group can stay together, then we could see a very, very fast time. At the moment, there's 10 athletes together. Kiptu still looking very good, very relaxed, and hopefully he'll stay through to at least 30 kilometres. Right at the back of that group, Mulle Wasserhoen.
Just got a glimpse there in number 7 as well, just towards the back, Solomon Deksisa, the Ethiopian, who's run 2 marathons and won 2 marathons in 2018. So here they are, about to leave the Amstel. There you can see the Amstel, the big stretch of water which snakes its way away to the left out of our picture, and they're going to take a right turn and go down one of the canals towards the another one of the business districts, as Richard was referring to. You can see there extensive building work going on still on the opposite bank.
Well, 3 of the athletes in this group are training partners, being coached by Gitane Tessema. That's Mulle Wasserhoen, Yenyao Alimiru, Mulle Wasserhoen, number 3. This is his 3rd appearance in Amsterdam, and he'll be looking to improve his personal best set here last year, 2 hours 5 minutes and 39 seconds. That only got him 4th place in previous editions of this race. That would have been good enough to win the race, but the course record has come down over the last 3 or 4 years. Used to belong to Wilson Chibet, and then it passed to Daniel Wanjiru, and then last year to Lawrence Chirono. There's Mulle Wasserhoen, as I say, coming from a track background, very keen to pick up his water. That's where we saw him spurt a little bit ahead. We'll probably see him now drop back to the group. And Solomon Deksisa right at the back of that group, number 7, losing a few metres, almost missed his drink. Again, probably a little bit of inexperience there for Deksisa, running his 6th marathon here in Amsterdam.
Here is Tadou Abete there, just off the back of that group. He's not let them get away entirely, but he's certainly dropped off the group. There is the defending champion. And it's just a feeling, isn't it, Richard? You can almost feel the relief when they spot their bottle and they get it in their hand. That's the hard bit done. Then they can relax a little bit, and you can understand why the likes of Mulle Wasserhoen make a definite dart to the right table to make sure they don't get blocked in. And how many times have we seen runners in the past completely miss the water station, and once it's gone, it's gone. Kenenisa earlier in the race was fortunate that a fellow runner handed him their bottle, but you can't rely on that.
Yeah, and they're getting instructions there from Jos Hermans, who puts together the elite field. Keep telling them to drink, a very critical part of the race, because if they leave their drinking till 35 kilometres or the last drink station, which in Amsterdam is at 38 kilometres, that's too late. So getting a lot of instructions from Hermans to keep the fluid intake strong. Yes, it is interesting, Chris, that, you know, for 15 minutes these athletes lock together shoulder to shoulder, and then they see a drinks table 100 metres up the road, and there's often a little bit of concern, if not panic, from one or two of the athletes, and that's what causes them to surge ahead.
There is Jos Hermans, we've been referring to him in the blue jacket on the back of that motorcade, keeping a close eye on the leading group, many of his athletes in there, including, of course, Kenenisa Bekele, who's just been consistently right behind Edwin Kiptoo, the main pacemaker.
Well, Jos has been following Kenenisa's career from the very start, from when he started winning world titles back in 2002 over the country. And Jos was telling us earlier this morning that he was back out in Addis at the end of August, wanting to see how Kenenisa's preparation was going. Very, very keen to see Kenenisa get back to winning ways. Kenenisa's only won, I say only, he's only won 2 marathons in his 8 starts so far, and today would be a confirmation really that he is back on top form if he can win here in Amsterdam. But I think Kenenisa, as well as wanting to win, he's wanting to get back to closer to that time he set in Berlin 2 years ago. 2 hours and 3 minutes and 3 seconds, the 3rd fastest time ever recorded at the marathon.
Well, that's the task facing Tadeu Abete, number 8. And the question is, can he come back into that leading group? It takes so much effort. We shouldn't underestimate how much it hurts. And he's just holding his side there. It is so hard running solo. But if he could just claw his way back to that leading group. And talking of running solo, here is the leading Dutch athlete, Ronald Schreur. He's run almost the entire race on his own. And he's making a great fist of it. He's on personal best pace, we think, still 2:16.19, his lifetime best. And if he were to get close to that, having run this race almost entirely on his own, that would be very, very impressive indeed. So these are the difficult kilometres, really. As Richard mentioned, it's relatively sparsely attended. This is every marathon, wherever you are in the world, has a relative no man's land where the crowds are a little bit thinner. Perhaps it's not quite as picturesque. It's a tough part of the race. You have to concentrate, dig in, and just trust yourself to click off those miles. Keep well hydrated. And all these athletes doing exactly that. And at this stage of the race, Richard, I don't know about you, I always start to look at the shoulders and look at the facial expressions and see who's looking comfortable. Certainly Kenenisa looks like that. And for me, maybe just Laban Korir at the back of this group, potentially looking like the next person to drop off the back. We shall see.
There's the taller figure of Yenyo Alimuru, number 13. Mentioned him before, coming from a track background, only his 2nd marathon today. Got a personal best from Dubai, 2 hours, 8 minutes and 56 seconds. But he was telling us a few days ago that he didn't prepare quite as well as he wanted to. But Laban Korir, number 5, very experienced marathon runner. Today it's his 14th marathon, and actually his 4th start in Amsterdam. So Korir knows this course inside out. Started out his marathon career in Amsterdam 7 years ago when he finished 2nd behind Wilson Chebet on his debut, and since then he's run some very fast times, including a best time here 2 years ago, 2 hours 5 minutes and 54 seconds. So Korea, a very consistent performer over the marathon. So there, number 1, Lawrence Chirono on the left of your screen. A few metres down on Kenenisa Bekele and Yenyao Alimiru, the 2 athletes from Ethiopia who've progressed to the marathon from a track background.
Well, this is good running, and it'll be significant when we hit 30 kilometres to see whether the pacemaker at the front of that group, who's done so brilliantly so far in this race, whether he continues beyond 30k. We think that he's been asked to just take them through 30k. If he's feeling good, he may well continue a little bit more, and it would be good for the race if he did. We'd like to see this group stick together for as long as possible to give us a race in the latter stages when the racing really starts.
Well, Chris, we've talked about contrasting running styles from the athletes. Look at Kenenisa's low arm carriage compared to some of the athletes, even Yenyao Alimiru and particularly Lawrence Chirono with that very high arm action. So those athletes with very contrasting styles and very contrasting backgrounds. I mean, Solomon Dixisa, only 24 years of age, he's an out-and-out road racer, a real fighter, as we saw, well, as I saw when I was with him in Mumbai earlier this year. But Kenenisa Bekele, doesn't he look good? Looks very relaxed at this pace.
Well, he could be just starting to grasp the coattails of that leading group. This is a phenomenal performance from Tadou Abete, number 8, who got dropped off about 5 or 6 kilometres ago. We thought that was his race done, but he's remained strong and disciplined, and just slowly but surely he seems to be trying to catch that leading group. And if he could just get back into it and then use the energy from the group, that could stand him in good stead. One of the Ethiopians there, don't be fooled by the foreshortening, that's a lot further than it looks, but it does, Richard, seem as though he hasn't certainly let them get away.
No, usually, as you say, Chris, the reason that the athletes drop off the group that they want to stay with is because they're struggling because of the pace. But maybe in Tadou Abete's case, it was just he was going through a bad patch, he got a stitch or something like that, and it definitely looks as though he's capable of rejoining that group. Well, there is the end of pacemaking responsibilities for Edwin Kiptoo. What a great job he's done. 29 kilometres, so just over a quarter of the race remaining. 13 kilometres, just under 13 kilometres remaining, and that leading group now of 10 athletes, it might become 11 athletes if the Ethiopian Tadou Abete can get back with them. But it is significant, isn't it, that Kenenisa Bekele has stayed at the front of that group, and he's the one who is keeping the pace strong as they head back towards the city centre and towards 30 kilometres. Well, that'll be our next indication, really, Chris, as to whether they are maintaining course record pace.
Well, course record pace would put them through 30 kilometres in a shade under an hour and a half. 1:29.52 was Lawrence Chirono's 30k split last year, and now the looking around starts, really. A lot of turning of heads, and it's, as you said, Kenenisa Bekele who's continued to shoulder the responsibility there. It's Ethiopia at the front, it's Kenya at the back in the form of Laban Korir. But we have, there he is, Laban Korir, just starting to drop off now. Does that provide Tadou Abete with a little bit of a target? Remember, Tadou Abete had been dropped, we thought, earlier on, and it's now Laban Korir, that forward-leaning style, who's been apparently dropped off, and that could give some heart to the man behind him, Tadou Abete.
Yeah, a lot can happen in the remaining 12 kilometres of this race. It's, as you say, Chris, quite possible that Korir is starting to struggle, but at the same time, if Tadou Abete came back onto his shoulder, then together they might be able to work their way back onto this leading group. Well, I think Kenenisa will be pleased that he's got someone other than himself to make the pace. That's Gideon Kipketer wearing number 4, the Kenyan athlete who is now running alongside Kenenisa. Kenenisa looking a little bit anxious to keep the pace strong, but he's got now 3 Kenyans alongside him, including last year's champion Lawrence Chirono, who is now striking out at the front. Kenenisa just settling in behind Chirono. Alongside Kenenisa is Gideon Kipketer and the black-vested athlete Jonathan Correa. So 3 Kenyan athletes at the front alongside Kenenisa, and being pursued by 3 other Ethiopians, Mule Wasahun, Solomon Dixisa and Yenyel Alamiru, and there's a couple of other Kenyans also in that group, including the lesser-known Hilary Kipsambu with a personal best of 2 hours, 8 minutes and 53 seconds. So he's operating well ahead of his personal best today.
Well, the good news is that the pace is being maintained. They went through 30 kilometres in 1:28.58, and that's still 54-55 seconds inside course record pace. So 12 kilometres to go, and the course record in the men's race still very much on. And we have 10 athletes here, 9 athletes with Korir and Abate, you can see just right of picture, trying desperately to get back to this leading group.
Well, a few moments ago it was Kipketer at the front. Kipketer's now dropped to the back of that group. Lawrence Chirono got his water early, as did the Ethiopian number 13 Yenyao Alamiru. Alamiru also coached by Gitane Tesema, who, a bit like Patrick Sang in Kenya, has huge experience of coaching Ethiopian marathon runners.
Well, there's Jos Hermans just on the motorbike, trying to get a few messages across, technical messages to Kenenisa, I'm sure.
I'm not sure I made sense of what he was trying to say, but hopefully the athletes understood what he was saying. But I think, as you picked up, Chris, Kenenisa has just in the last few metres dropped to the back of that group, and we would hope that that's a very deliberate move on the instructions of Jos Hermans. We would hope that he's doing that to settle in, but that's not exactly where we would want to see him, because it looks now, even from our overhead shot, that Kenenisa is a few metres down on that leading group. So that just shows how in the space of literally a few minutes so much can change in the marathon.
It can, in the blink of an eye. There we can see Özbilen and Bekele a few kilometres off, going through 31 kilometres. He has shouldered much of the early part of the race, certainly the first half of the race. He was right there, wasn't he, like a limpet, stuck to the shoulder of the main pacemaker. But he's still looking pretty good, I would say. Özbilen for company, Mike Keegan, as we continue to know him as. But that's quite a gap now between those two and Lawrence Chirono. And Lawrence Chirono within, what, I would say less than a kilometre of Edwin Kiptu, the main pacemaker, dropping out. Chirono made a definite beeline for the front. And let's remind ourselves that he ran that really impressive negative split last year, which took him all the way to the course record. And as Richard has already pointed out, it was that 5 kilometre section between 35 and 40 that really did the damage. That section was 14:23, a blistering 5 kilometre split. And that's the sort of pace they're going to have to go to maintain this course record. They're inside course record and have been, but we need to take stock after 40 kilometres.
Well, what has changed very much is Kenenisa's facial expression, and that is saying that he, I think, is starting to struggle. He's now 20-30 metres down on that leading group, and he's got his work cut out if he's going to make it back into that leading group. Chris, you mentioned earlier that Kenenisa has experience of dropping off the leading group and then coming back. He did it in London a few years ago, so we can't rule him out, but this is not looking as good for Kenenisa as it was a few kilometres earlier. He's really having to work hard, and just his facial expression is that he is really struggling, because that leading group still looking very strong. 7 athletes there, including last year's champion Chirono, number 4 Gideon Kipkeita, and 3 of the other Ethiopian athletes, including on the left of your screen Yenyao Alimiru, and I think you'd have to say one of the favourites there, number 7 Solomon Dixisa, coming into this race off the back of 2 marathon victories earlier this year in Mumbai and Hamburg. So that leading group now down to 5 athletes with still over 10 kilometres to run.
Well, that last kilometre or so has really sorted out the men from the boys, and we were still with a group of 10 or 11, and there is the size of the challenge facing Kenenisa Bekele. That's the view he has approaching 32 kilometres. And as Richard says, how quickly things can change in the marathon. Everything going swimmingly well, and as soon as Edwin Kiptoo dropped out, the whole tone of the race changed. They were on their own and the racing started, and boy has it started.
Well, Herman's trying to give encouragement to Kenenisa, but that now looks to be a mammoth task for Kenenisa to claw his way back at this stage of the race. I wouldn't put it beyond him, but at the same time, the speed at which these leading 5 athletes are moving, and also how they're looking. They're 3 Kenyan athletes, 2 Ethiopians, and they're being led by the lesser-known Jonathan Korea.
Well, Jonathan Korea, this is only his 3rd ever marathon. He's actually down, I think, officially as making his debut here, but we can tell you he's run a couple of marathons prior to this, both in China. But this would be some performance by Jonathan Korea, one of the 3 Kenyans, as Richard said, the 2 Ethiopians.
And Chirono just having a glance over his shoulder, probably wondering where Kenenisa is or how big that group is. Well, he won't be able to see Kenenisa, because Kenenisa's now at least 50 metres down on that leading group of 5. Kenenisa desperately trying to regroup, keep his rhythm and claw his way back. The good thing is that he's got 1 or 2 athletes just a few metres down the road that he can focus on, but meanwhile at the front of the race, Jonathan Korea is really keeping the pace hot. On his shoulder, Chirono with that very high arm action. In fact, both those Kenyan athletes, Korea and Chirono, have got noticeably high arm action, as has the 3rd Kenyan, Gideon Kipkeita.
We're into the final 10 kilometres of the race now. You can see another sharp left-hand turn as they start to pick their way through towards the port of Amsterdam, and then eventually they'll make another left-hand turn and start the final run back towards the stadium and to the finish line. Further back, the Dutch athletes, Michel Butter there, wearing number 14, going through 30 kilometres. This the chasing group very much in the Dutch Championship race, with Ronald Schreur way out in front on his own. Michel Butter then unofficially 4th in that Dutch race. And this the chasing group now. And Abate, who looked dead and buried, has reeled in Kenenisa Bekele. That's how quickly things can change.
And Abate, look how good he's looking. Abate definitely has recovered from that bad patch that he went through about 20-30 minutes ago. and has overtaken Kenenisa. I think the challenge is, can Kenenisa go with him? But the speed at which Abate is now moving through the field means that Kenenisa is really struggling to stay with him. But Abate, Kenenisa, they're still, what I would say, about 100 metres down on that leading group of 5.
Well, this is relentless from this leading group, and you have to say Jonathan Courier and Lawrence Chirono, the main architects of that injection of pace. Solomon Dexisa, one of the 2 Ethiopians in that leading group, flying the flag for Ethiopia in the absence of Kenenisa Bekele. Dexisa has been very much just at low profile, hasn't really taken on the front running very much indeed at all in these first 30 kilometres or so, but he's still very much in there.
Very, very tough competitor. He actually, when he was a teenager, started out as a track runner, ran the 3,000 metres at the World Youth Championships 7 years ago when he was just 17, but very quickly moved onto the roads and moved up to the marathon, and today is his 6th marathon, but a very tough competitor. And when I watched him in Mumbai at the start of this year, he came up against a very tough Kenyan and Ethiopian and battled it out with them and came out on top. So Dexisa, 24 years of age, looking for his 3rd marathon victory of 2018.
There is Kenenisa, and not only has he failed to go with Abate, who's way out in front, he seems to have really recovered from what seemed to be a terminal problem in the race. Not at all. Abate has got back, and now his next challenge is to try and get back to this leading group of 5. And now it's Jonathan Courier who's starting to perhaps suffer. And is that group of 5 starting to become, Richard, a group of 4?
I think it is, and I think what's striking is that group of 4 are all athletes who know this course very well. Courier running in Amsterdam for his first time, as you mentioned, Chris, a relative newcomer to the marathon. I think you did your research and found that he had run 1 or 2 marathons in China before this race, although our statistics are saying it's his debut. But those 3-4 leading athletes not only experienced at the marathon, but they know this course very well as these leading 3 athletes head back towards the Amstel River and the big landmarks of the city. It's now Kip Keita who is starting to struggle. He's one of the sub 206 performers in the field, but you can just see from his facial expression that he's now finding it very hard as Courier tries to close the gap on him. But at the front, well, doesn't Muli Wasahoon look relaxed? Looking
very relaxed indeed. So 2 Ethiopians and 1 Kenyan as we just go back to the Dutch Championship now. Is this all about to change? Because that is the chasing pack, Ronald Schreur, number 21, who was way out in front of his compatriots. And now that group of 3, including there in the centre of picture, Michel Butter, have got a target. And is Ronald Schreur starting to pay the price for all that running he did on his own? You have to take your hat off to him, Richard, but I'm afraid now it looks as though it's catching up with him.
Yes, and these 3 athletes have been working together from the start, helping each other, and they're, with every step, they're closing in on Schreur. So I think the question is, will Schreur be able to pick himself up when those 3 other Dutch athletes join him? They've got just under half an hour of running, or maybe just over half an hour for them. They're probably on target for about a 2:15, 2:16 finishing time. But meanwhile, at the front of the race, defending champion Lawrence Chirono is left alongside two Ethiopians, Muli Wasahun, who finished 4th here last year, and Solomon Dixisa, running actually here in Amsterdam for the first time. So Dixisa in great shape, coming off the back of 2 marathon victories in Mumbai and Hamburg earlier this year. And here, this is the race for the Dutch Marathon Championship, being led by number 26, Stijn de Vulde, running alongside Michel Butter.
Well, approaching 35 kilometres, and this split will be very significant indeed. We're now down to just 3 athletes, 2 Ethiopians and a Kenyan, so a good chance for Ethiopia to break this monopoly that Kenya has had over the last few years. But the one Kenyan athlete still in it significantly is the defending champion. There is Kenenisa Bekele, who is approaching 35 kilometres. And he is way down. And this group has broken free.
Well, Schwer is really struggling, and I think he just stopped on the road. Maybe he's got a bit of cramp, but that looks like it's the end of his challenge, certainly to get on the podium here in the Dutch National Marathon Championship. So Schwer started out so positively and so strongly, opened up a big gap in that race for the Dutch marathon title, but now is well down on the leading 3 Dutch athletes. Meanwhile, at the front of the race, as the athletes come back towards the Amstel River with just over 6 kilometres to run, it's Chirono who's really making the pace.
Well, the crowds will thicken, the atmosphere is building all the time as they head towards the finish line here. About 20 minutes of running left. It's Chirono, the defending champion. It's Wasihun, remember, who fell at 38 kilometres. He won't do that again, I'm sure. I hope I'm not going to tempt fate by suggesting that. But he will have learnt from that. There is Korir urging Kenenisa Bekele on, but they are way down. That was a decisive break, and well, we've mentioned that Kenenisa has found himself chasing in previous races and still come good in the end, but this, Richard, surely is too much of a gap to make up.
Yeah, this is a big gap now between, well, the leading 3, and I think Kip Keita is in 4th, and you can see Laban Korir trying to encourage Kenenisa to go with him, but Kenenisa trying to keep his rhythm, still looking quite smooth, but he just hasn't got the energy in the tank to follow Korir. So these athletes some way down on that leading group of 3. We can just see at the back of picture number 4, Gideon Kipkeita. He's about 50 or 60 metres down on the 3 leaders, and further back I think is the Ethiopian Tadu Abata, and it's some way beyond him Laban Korir and Kenenisa. So it looks to me as though the race is between these 3 athletes. Very tough. Solomon Dixisa, that expression of grit and determination has been on his face, I think, for the last half an hour, Chris.
Yeah, we shouldn't be fooled by that. It looks perhaps as though it's discomfort, but you're absolutely right, he's been looking like that really since kilometre 1.
And by contrast, the other Ethiopian, Mule Wasahun, looks to me as though he's just out for a run in the park. Looks, certainly from his facial expression, very relaxed, but they're going to be hurting as they enter the final 5 kilometres. Look at Mule Wasahun, all the time just looking to his side, running on the shoulder of last year's winner, Chirono. And it's Chirono, I think, who is still making the pace. And Chirono, of course, and Wasahun find themselves in a very similar position to last year, when it was 4 of them heading back into Vondel Park together. Well, Kenenisa still getting encouragement from Jos Hermans, being encouraged to look ahead towards Korea. There's I think the 5th place athlete, Tadu Abata, who himself is at least 100 metres down on Gideon Kipketer.
So these are the leading 3 athletes, well inside course record pace, and they're the centre of Amsterdam starting to loom large. They're now heading from east to west, horizontally if you like, looking at the map, and they're passing the Amstel Hotel.
Beautiful views over the Amstel. So that's 5 kilometres to go. They come off this bridge and they will cross the 37-kilometre point in a few moments, and then the last drink station on the course today is at 38 kilometres. They may or may not take a drink there, and then they'll head into Vondel Park, and the 3 of them locked together. Dixisa, the Ethiopian, he hasn't done any of the pacemaking. It's really Chirono and Wasserhoen, and they really are putting on the pressure now. Even Wasserhoen, who a few moments earlier was looking relaxed, he's now looking very determined, wanting to stay alongside Chirono. And this is where any of these 3 athletes could make their winning move.
Well, we have a race. We said right at the top of the race we hoped that there would be genuine racing in the latter stages of the Amsterdam Marathon 2018, and we've got exactly that. Look at the cadence, still maintaining very, very high tempo. And Wasserhoen, remember, who was so disappointed to fall at around 38 kilometres last year, looks in a really mean mood here. Disappointing for Kenenisa Bekele. He's really paying for that first part of the race. And Wasserhoen now just starting to open up a little bit of daylight on the defending champion, Lawrence Chirono, in the orange vest, and Dixisa with that what looks to be a slightly pained expression on his face, but as we've said, he's looked like that right from the start of the race. And is this, Richard, a break from Wasserhoen? Looking left, looking right.
Well, this is really testing Wasserhoen here. It's his 7th marathon, and he's yet to win a marathon. He's got a great credentials in terms of his time, but his agent Valentine Trau was saying yesterday he's in great shape. Has he got that winning determination? Because he's being pursued by 2 athletes who know what it's like to win big city races. Solomon Dixisa has already won Mumbai and Hamburg this year. Chirono won here in Amsterdam last year and has won 5 big city races. Mully Wasserhoen aiming for his first big city marathon win here, and the question is, has he got that winning mind, that winning determination to see off his opponents as they enter the final stages of this race?
Well, what a picture this is. Amsterdam on an autumnal Sunday morning, once again delivering a really thrilling marathon. And Lawrence Chirono is saying, do you know what, with all due respect, Mr. Wasserhoen, I'm the defending champion. I still have a say in how this race will be won in 2018. We saw that blistering 35 to 40 kilometre split last year. They've just gone through 38 kilometres. So into the last 5 kilometres and a few bits. And we still have, as we wanted, 3 athletes. Any one of these 3 could win, but for me, it looks as though it's going to come down to Wasserhoen or Chirono.
And there they go, past the Rijksmuseum. Athletes won't be that interested in the sights they're passing, but at least we can enjoy them on our screens this morning. And the crowd's enjoying seeing the leading athletes go past Chirono still looking very good. Dixisa having to grit in and try and stay with Wasserhoon and Chirono. The pace is still very, very strong.
Well, it's very strong. It's comfortably inside course record pace, and unless somebody blows up very badly here, I think we may well see a course record here in Amsterdam for the third consecutive year in the men's race. Kenenisa Bekele still actually looking pretty smooth, isn't he? He's just not got the response when there was an injection of pace.
So entering Vondel Park, 3 kilometres, just over 3 kilometres to run, and it's Dixisa who is the first of the athletes to show signs of weakness. Now a few metres down, he's working as hard as he can to claw his way back onto the shoulder of his compatriot Wasserhoon, but Solomon Dixisa, well, is this one race too much for him, having had 2 big wins already this year? Meanwhile, some way further back, Kenenisa still being encouraged by Jos Hermans to close the gap on Korea. So there's the Rijksmuseum. That gives us a indication of how far back he is.
Yeah, full of the Dutch masters, of course, and, well, out on the course, one of the masters of long distance running over the last decade or so. But there is a wonderful aerial shot of Vondel Park, and here we are down to 2, I think we can safely say now. Coming through Vondel Park, right of picture, Lawrence Chirono, the defending champion from Kenya, against Bully Wasserhoon, who was 4th last year, who fell at 38 kilometres a year ago. Still very much on 2 feet here as they go through 39 kilometres, inside course record pace. And Lawrence Chirono now, is this the break? Is this once again Lawrence Chirono saying, I will retain my title?
Well, we've seen so many repeat victories here in Amsterdam in the last 10 years, and Chirono making a very bold bid to defend his title. Was a bit of a surprise winner here last year when we were looking at the likes of Wasserhoon, Kiptum, Keegan. Well, very suddenly Chirono has put his foot down and opened up 10-15 metres on Wasserhoon. Wasserhoon still looking strong, but he's actually now being caught by Solomon Dixisa, the other Ethiopian. So Chirono, who's been looking very strong, bouncing off the tarmac for the last 15-20 minutes, this is his winning bid. Just less than 10 minutes of running as they go through Vondel Park, and that gap, look at that, Chris, that's gone to almost 30-40 metres in the last half a minute.
Well, that could be a race-winning injection of pace from Chirono. He has to back himself from here. He has to keep his foot on the gas, keep going. And now there's a race for second place, and Wasserhoon has been reeled in by Dixisa. So the 2 Ethiopians there in pursuit, and Dixisa now has perhaps had a second wind, and Dixisa now fancies himself. And has he got enough? Has he got enough of the course left to mount a bid to try and reel in Lawrence Chirono? Wasserhoon, and again, Richard, it's a great example of how quickly things can change. We saw it with Kenenisa Bekele earlier on in the race. Chirono makes his move, Wasserhoon looked left for dead, and now Dixisa is back in pursuit. Kenya 1, Ethiopia 2, Ethiopia 3, and here's how it happened.
So that's where Chirono really put his foot down. Wasserhoon looking back, realising that Chirono was striking out, and look how relaxed Chirono looks. Even with that uncharacteristically high arm action, and look at the speed now at which Dixisa has gone past Wasserhoon and is really chasing out after Chirono. So this would be quite remarkable. So Chirono through 40 kilometres, he's still about 45 seconds up on his split from last year.
It's extraordinary. He is going to smash the course record once again. If he can just keep going for another 2 kilometres, this would be an extraordinary performance. There was something, as you say, of an eyebrow raised when he won here last year. Well, if he can back it up and not just win the race again, but slice off a huge amount of time from his own course record, I think that puts to bed any suggestion that last year was a fluke. Lawrence Chirono on his way to a second successive victory here and leading once again the Ethiopian athletes in his wake.
And here's Kenenisa Bekele on his way through Vondel Park. He's had a very tough last 10 kilometres since he dropped off that leading group, but he stayed in the race. He's got a lot of encouragement from his manager Jos Hermans, who's been following him, although Hermans now looks as though he's gone off to the front of the race. But Kenenisa's still in the race and still keen to finish, but it's Chirono who is extending his lead. Dixisa right at the back of picture is the Ethiopian athlete in second place, but it's Chirono who comes out with a 40-50 metre lead as they come out of Vondel Park.
Well, here back further down the course, the Dutch Championship very much still being contested here. Michel Butter there in the centre of picture. I'm afraid that Ronald Schreur, who was leading the way in the Dutch Championship, has now gone, and it's down to these three. Stein den Wulde.
Well, it's going to be a fascinating battle between these three athletes. They've been locked together from the start and in some senses helping each other with the pace, but with about 20 minutes of running for them, they'll be now keen to run their own race and see who can win the Dutch marathon title. But at the front of the race, with less than 2 kilometres to run, Lawrence Chirono, the stadium will be coming into sight very soon. And Chris, as you say, although he might not know it himself, he is within target of setting his own or breaking his own course record here.
Kenenisa Bekele approaching 40 kilometres in almost exactly 2 hours. And when you think this man has run a marathon in 2:03:03, that's just not been his day today, Kenenisa Bekele. And actually he's kept his smoothness in his rhythm very nicely indeed. At no stage has he looked as though he's really struggling. But this man, Lawrence Chirono, now into the last kilometre, has the streets of Amsterdam and the freedom of Amsterdam for the second year running. Remember, this time last year, he still had somebody else for company. The winning margin just 4 seconds last year ahead of Norbert Keegan. This year it looks more comfortable. A little glance over the shoulder to the right and he will see that he is well clear, and he has exactly 1 kilometre to go to reach the final stages in that stadium.
And the exciting thing for us here in Amsterdam is that the 2-hour 5-minute mark has never been beaten in Amsterdam. The course record set by Chirono here 12 months ago, 2 hours 5 minutes and 9 seconds, and it would be a very big occasion for Amsterdam to see a sub-5 clocking. In fact, there are only 3 races this year where we've seen a winning time of under 2 hours and 5 minutes, and the way Chirono is moving with the stadium in sight, we could see for the first time in Amsterdam a winning time of under 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Well, history could be made here in Amsterdam. There is a former history maker, Kenenisa Bekele, just about to exit Vondel Park. He'll turn left and he is into the final kilometre as well. But here is Lawrence Chirono then, with 600 metres to go. The noise increasing, the atmosphere absolutely outstanding here in Amsterdam. The stadium he can see looming ahead, and he's almost there. Lawrence Chirono, victorious in 2017, and surely now will be victorious again in 2018. 500 metres to go.
Well, what a record he's had. Today's its 13th marathon. He's already won 5 marathons, and today he's going to add another big city marathon title to his list of victories. What a performance.
Lawrence Chirono then, just a few more twists and turns, the crowd getting right behind him. 2:03.08. Are we going to see the first ever sub-2:05 marathon here in Amsterdam? It's Lawrence Chirono. Once he gets inside the stadium, he's got a mere 200 metres to go. The atmosphere, I can tell you, inside the stadium is building beautifully. And here he is, Lawrence Chirono, inside this famous stadium. 90 years ago, this was the venue for the Olympic Games in 1928. History made there. Is Lawrence Chirono going to make history in 2018? 150 metres to go. 2:03.41 on the clock. Let's call him home on a beautiful autumnal day in Amsterdam. Lawrence Chirono on his way to history here in Amsterdam. He won in 2017 in a course record, 2:05.09, and he's going to smash the course record by almost a minute. Lawrence Chirono, for the second year running, is victorious in Amsterdam. The 43rd Amsterdam Marathon is won by Lawrence Chirono, and he has done it yet again, and it's a second successive course record for Lawrence Chirono from Kenya.
A sensational, and there is Kenenisa Bekele struggling and dropping out of the race. Meanwhile, back at the finish, Mule Wasahoon overhauling his compatriot to take second place. Solomon Dixisa finishing in third. All three athletes well inside last year's course record. What a sensational race we've had this year, and there's the winner, Lawrence Chirono, rewriting the record books for the second year running here in Amsterdam. And well, what a sad sight that is. Kenenisa worked so hard.
Well, this is extraordinary to see any athletes dropping out, but an athlete of the calibre of Kenenisa to walk off the road there with the finish line pretty much in sight. He must be in a fairly bad way there. He was inside, what, a kilometre and a half, less than a mile from the finish, and a consoling hand on the shoulder there from Jos Hermans. That must hurt, both physically and mentally.
Yes, and I think we saw a shot earlier when he was crossing the river or one of the canals that maybe he'd stopped earlier in the race and he was clutching his hip. So clearly a problem for Kenenisa. There are our podium finishers. The Kenyan champion, Lawrence Chirono, winner here for the second year running. And here's the fourth place athlete, Gideon Kipketer.
Well, Gideon Kipketer coming home to take fourth place behind the two Kenyans, and this has been absolutely outstanding. The top three all inside last year's course record, and I can tell you that Lawrence Chirono has taken 63 seconds off last year's course record that he himself held. Labon Korea coming in. He was part of that group of 10 for so long. He was seen cajoling Kenenisa Bekele, trying to get him going again. Some terrific performances here from these leading East Africans. Abate, he was struggling, found a second wind and came back to reel in Bekele. Jonathan Correa also played his part, has done brilliantly well as well in his Amsterdam debut marathon.
Well, this race just gets better and better each year. 8 athletes today have gone under 2 hours and 7 minutes, and if you think that when Haile Gebrselassie won here in 2005, his winning time was 2 hours 6 minutes and 20 seconds. Well, today we've seen a winning time more than 2 minutes faster than that. There's the 9th athlete, Hilary Kipsambu, a personal best time for Kipsambu. So lots of personal best times, and they're the biggest name here in Amsterdam, sadly having to end his marathon without being able to finish. What a disappointment that must be.
Well, we need to be careful not to write off an athlete as great as Kenenisa Bekele, but the DNFs, I'm afraid, are starting to come with rather worrying regularity for Kenenisa Bekele. It's not the first time he's had to drop out of a race. Here is Yeno Alamiru, another Ethiopian who, again, was in that leading group. But this is a painful watch, isn't it, Richard, for fans of great world-class athletics?
Yeah, I mean, Kenenisa, he's at the stage of his career where he's probably wondering, you know, should I continue? If I continue, you know, how much more can I give to the sport? He's been competing at the highest level. Well, he's been one of the greats of distance running for the last 18, 19 years. And to have experiences like this is very, very tough. So he will go back to Ethiopia. We'll have a think, have a speak with Jos Hermans. But there's so many people in the sport who want him to continue because they believe that he's still got one or two great performances in him. But it's very tough to come back from this kind of disappointment.
Well, he's still raising a smile, 36 years old, and it's easy to say his age starting to catch up with him. And of course, he was talking so positively, saying that as long as the training's going well, age is just a number. Well, we return to our earlier point that there are a finite number of marathons in every athlete. There is the scene then inside the Olympic Stadium here in Amsterdam, and we've seen history once again. The course record absolutely smashed by Laurens Chirono, and we're waiting for the Dutch Championship to reach a climax. And I can tell you that Edwin de Vries is leading the way from Michel Butter. Well, let's go down and hear from Laurens Chirono, winner for the second year running and a new course record.
Laurens Chirono, congratulations. Successive victory here in Amsterdam. What does this victory mean to you?
I humble myself because I won this race. It is a great achievement to me. I must congratulate myself and thank God for the help and the talent, the gift of talent that He has given me. Now I'm happy by winning this race. Yes.
In a new track record again. You broke the track record last year. You did it again.
This is because this time weather was good. The wind was a bit slow, so we had to run faster than last year.
Final question. Will we see you next year again here in Amsterdam?
I will be happy to come back again.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is the Dutch athletes coming through Vondel Park, and it looks like Michel Butter has got opened up a few meters on his compatriot Edwin de Vries, number 23. The race still on. Michel Butter, this is what he wanted to do. He came here to Amsterdam not to set any best times, but to win the Dutch national title. And he looks as though he's on his way, still looking good. 32 years of age, set his personal best here in Amsterdam 6 years ago. Well, he's got a gap of 15, 20 metres, it looks like, as Butter exits Vondel Park. He will know the next 2,000 metres of tarmac very well, having run here in Amsterdam many times before, including when he set his personal best here of 2 hours, 9 minutes and 58 seconds. Well, is that the first female athlete? That is interesting.
Well, the female athletes coming towards the end of their race, and that is Shashu Insemu from Ethiopia. And of course, a lot of the headlines before the race about two other Ethiopians, Tadej Bekele, of course, the defending champion, and the high-profile debut of Meseret Defar, also Ethiopian. But the athlete wearing F5, 25 years old, Shashu Insemu, winner in Copenhagen earlier this year, is on her way seemingly to victory here in Amsterdam. This would be some performance.
Well, it would be a big surprise as well, wouldn't it, Chris? With names like Meseret Defar, we haven't mentioned Linnet Masai, the world champion from 2011 on the track, and of course the defending champion Tadej Bekele. Those were the three athletes that we were looking for, but it looks as though the 25-year-old Ethiopian Shasho Insermo, as she makes her way through Vondel Park, we don't yet know how big her lead is, but it looks to us as though she's on her way to another big marathon victory. Already won 4 marathons in her career, 4 out of her 8 marathons run to date in Cologne, Marrakesh, Nagano and Copenhagen. Well, if she wins here in Amsterdam, this will definitely be the biggest win to date in her marathon career.
So back to the Dutch Championships, and here is Michel Butter. Richard, he's on his way into the last 2 kilometres.
Well, what a great career Michel Butter has had. Like so many of the athletes we've been following today, started out as a track athlete, ran for Holland in 2007 actually in the European Under-23 Championships, over 10,000 metres, but over the last 6 or 7 years has built his reputation as Holland's top marathon runner alongside Abdi Nagea. Well, last year he had to play second fiddle to Abdi Nagea, who came here and set a new national record over the marathon, 2 hours 8 minutes and 17 seconds. Nagea not here today because of injury, and it's Michel Butter who has come back to Amsterdam, and this I think will make amends for his disappointment of not being able to run for Holland in the European Championships in Berlin.
Well, approaching 40 kilometres for Shasho Insermo, and there is the defending champion in pursuit, Tadej Bekele, who won so brilliantly last year. She's the quickest in the field by 2.5 minutes, but on this occasion in second place, chasing her compatriot Insermo. And once again, the marathon distance throws up surprises. Just checking her watch there. She is so consistent. We mentioned, didn't we, how consistent she is, Richard, but she's coming through Vondel Park, and that is a measure of the distance. I have to say, Insermo not looking entirely convincing in terms of her cadence.
And also Tadej Bekele has got her own pacemaker from her training group. That's Berahun Hagos, just a few metres up on her, urging Tadej Bekele to fight her way back. As you say, Chris, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that she will be able to catch Insermo. So Michel Butter, 400 metres away from the finish, coming back into the Olympic Stadium. As I say, this will make amends for Butter. A disappointing summer, not being able to compete in Berlin in the European Championships, not being able to compete in Berlin, but having to come here and take on the best that Holland can throw at him. It's Michel Butter who is going to take the Dutch marathon title. His time a lot slower than his best time, but that won't matter to him. Butter came here today knowing he wasn't at his best, but very keen to win the Dutch marathon title. Just having a look over his shoulder as he comes into the final 100 metres. He is being pursued by De Vries, Edwin De Vries, there we are at the back, but it's Michel Butter taking the applause of the spectators. He is the 2018 Dutch marathon champion.
Well, congratulations to Michel Butter. Not at his best, as Richard was saying, but his best on the day, good enough to come home just ahead of Edwin De Vries. So the first 2 Dutch athletes over the line, and a little pat of congratulations between teammates there. That was a really gutsy, dogged performance there from Michel Butter, who had to dig in deep. And let's remind ourselves that the early running was made by Ronald Schreur, who was out on his own for so long, and working as a group as we were told they would. They've gradually reeled in Schreur, and that's taken its toll on Edwin de Vries and Michel Butter.
Well, Chris, I think de Vries in second place was very, very close to his personal best, 2 hours 17 and 48 seconds. But it's Butter being congratulated. I'm not sure if that's his daughter or his brother's daughter, but it's one of his younger fans. And I think Butter in quite a lot of pain. So back to the women's race. This is the defending champion, Tadej Bekele, and well, this is going to be fascinating because she is closing in on her compatriot Shasho Insermu. Meanwhile, nearer to the finish, Ronald Schreur, who we saw earlier, about half an hour ago, having to stop on the course. Well, Schreur has got his rhythm back and is back. I'm not sure whether he's in third place or whether there are any other Dutch athletes behind de Vries and Butter, but Schreur, he is going to finish the race. This is the leading female athlete.
This is Shasho Insermu, and we said just a few minutes ago she wasn't looking entirely convincing. She had a handsome lead over the defending champion Tadej Bekele, but Bekele, I have to say, is closing in fast, and the question is, as they enter the final 2 kilometres, has Insermu got enough of this 42-kilometre course left to be able to take victory? And the answer, I think, emphatically, Richard, is no.
And I think what we see here is the benefit of having your own pacemaker, because not only is Tadej Bekele operating at a faster pace, but Tadej Bekele is being urged on by Berahun Hagos, that's number 90, who has been acting as Bekele's personal pacemaker, and Tadej Bekele, who a few minutes ago was some way down on Insermu, has now put herself into the lead in the final kilometre of this race.
Well, this is extraordinary. Are we heading for both defending champions from last year retaining their titles? Tadej Bekele with, as Richard said, the benefit of her own personal pacemaker. Has she judged this to perfection? What has Shasho Insermu got left? Physically, she looks pretty ragged. Mentally, this is a real test for her, and that gap has grown and grown. The course record won't be troubled here in the women's race, unlike the men's. But Tadej Bekele is on her way to a second victory here in Amsterdam in as many years. She won last year in 21:54. She got within a minute of the course record. Just a little glance over the right shoulder will tell her that the gap is growing, and she is now on her way, being urged on by her pacemaker.
Well, Tadej Bekele has great memories of winning here last year. It was her 10th marathon a year ago, but it was her first victory in her 4-year marathon career. She went to London in April and finished third in her fastest ever time, which is not going to improve on today, but that won't matter because she's come back to Amsterdam and she will defend her title and record her second big city marathon victory.
Tadej Bekele then is almost there. The stadium beckons, the crowd building all the time, and inside the stadium, any second now, she will be greeted with a wall of noise inside this iconic stadium. And here she comes, Tadej Bekele, with that winning feeling for the second year running, and she has reeled in and overtaken her compatriot Insermu. It's going to be an Ethiopian 1-2 in the women's race, and Insermu was so close, but Tadej Bekele, 150 metres to go, is going to win here in Amsterdam for the second year running. Last year, an emphatic performance, the biggest win of her career, and Tadej Bekele has done what Lawrence Chirono did in the men's race and is going to retain her title. Tadej Bekele, such consistency, such ability. And Tadej Bekele, the time doesn't matter. It's not going to bother her personal best. But Tadej Bekele, victorious in 2017, is victorious again in 2018. Tadej Bekele leads home an Ethiopian 1-2. And Tadej Bekele is a two-time Amsterdam Marathon champion.
Well, what a gutsy performance there by Bekele. Overhauled the long-time leader, Shasho Insermu, who gets second place, and in third place, finishing incredibly fast. I think that's another Ethiopian athlete. Let's just see if we can get her name. Yep, Gebru. So a 1-2-3 for Ethiopia. Asmeru Gebru takes third place. There's the winner, Tadej Bekele. As you say, Chris, what a consistent performer. Today running her 12th marathon, and all of those marathons run in times between 2:21 and 2:25. And she will be delighted to have defended her title. Her second ever big city marathon win, and she had to work incredibly hard for that and claw her way back and overhaul in Semu. So a 1-2-3 for Ethiopia in the women's race.
What outstanding performances there. And here is Meseret Defar in her marathon debut, just left of picture. She's found it tough, it would appear, today on the streets of Amsterdam, but what a day for Ethiopia. Tadej Bekele retaining her title. And now these men still coming in. Michel Butter giving his interview for the world's media, Dutch television in particular. He was the first Dutchman home. And there a nice embrace there between the two Ethiopian compatriots. Gebru in third place. I can tell you, I think that Desi Jisa from Bahrain came home in fourth place unofficially. There, the winning smile of the three Ethiopians. And Meseret Defar, well, she will have learnt from that experience. Meseret Defar will try and bring her home into the stadium, full of confidence, full of smiles in the hotel last night. That's been tough today.
Yes, we were speaking with Defar's husband yesterday, and he said that today was very much an experiment to see how Meseret would cope with the longer distance.
And here's how she did it. Tadej Bekele. Misconsistent. Brilliant run in her 12th marathon to add to her third place in London earlier this year. It's been a brilliant 2018. It's been a brilliant last couple of years for Tadej Bekele. And the story here from Amsterdam is that both the men's and women's winners have successfully retained their titles from last year.
Well, here's the aftermath of 26 miles of hard work and fast running on tarmac. There's Bekele reflecting on her win and reflecting on how hard she had to work, I think, to claw herself back and just overhaul the long-time leader Shasho Insermu as they came through the final 2 kilometres.
Well, their confirmation of the results in the men's race a little bit earlier on, 2:04.06, a massive new course record here in Amsterdam, and the top 3 all under 2:05 for the first time. We've never had a sub 2:05 marathon in Amsterdam, and we have 3 athletes all getting under that mark in the same year. Kenya once again maintaining their monopoly on winning performances in the men's race through Lawrence Chirono. And it was Ethiopia's day once again in the women's, in the form of Tadej Bekele. So Chirono and Bekele both retaining their titles from last year.
Yes, and all 3 athletes in the men's race setting new personal best marks, and leading that group, Lawrence Chirono. Well, what a race that was. Another negative split. And 2 hours, 4 minutes and 6 seconds. It puts him right in at the top of world marathon running. I think it's the equal 4th fastest time in 2018. Kipchoge obviously way ahead with his world record in Berlin, and then 2 other slightly faster times set in Dubai on the faster course in Dubai at the start of this year. But what a run by Chirono, and that really opens up all possibilities for him, as some of the big race organisers will be wanting Chirono to appear in their races next year.
Well, their confirmation of the podium finishes for the women's race. All Ethiopians, not Kenyans, of course. 2:23.07 the winning time. Tadalech Bekele outside her personal best by some distance, but it wasn't about times today. It was all about getting the win, and Tadalech Bekele getting that win for the 2nd year running. And commiserations to Sasho Nsermu, who must have thought with 4 or 5 kilometres to go that it was going to be her day. Sadly it wasn't, so 2nd place for her. And Asmira Gebru coming home in 3rd place to complete an Ethiopian 1-2-3. So a clean sweep on the podium for Ethiopia.
Well, you're right, Chris, to say it's not about the times, although Sasho Nsermu, the 2nd place athlete, will go home knowing that she has run 7 minutes faster than she's ever run before. So that shows how fast Amsterdam is, and a reason why so many of the top performers like to come to Amsterdam. And I think even the 3rd place athlete, Asmeru Gebru, has recorded a big personal best. There's Tadalech Bekele being helped by her coach, Gitu Asmai. He's got a very good group, training group back in Addis Ababa, which also includes Leul Gebrselassie, and that's Berahun Hagos, who was Tadalech Bekele's pacemaker. So Tadalech Bekele being surrounded by her coach and training partner, 2 people who've been very close and very important in her preparation and also in the delivery of her performance today.
Well, Tadalech Bekele also managed by Jos Hermans, so he'll have had a mixed day, really, Jos Hermans. Kenenisa Bekele sadly dropping out, but the other Bekele, no relation, Tadalech coming through to take the win in the women's race.
Well, we're drawing towards the end of our coverage here in Amsterdam. Another big day for the event, a new course record in the men's race, and as we've been saying, another example of where Amsterdam produces repeat victories, with both men's and women's winners defending their titles from last year. That's all from us here in Amsterdam. We've enjoyed covering for you, and it's goodbye from Chris Dennis and me, Richard Namuka, here in Amsterdam.
gemeld. Hij gaat een beschikende wedstrijd in Breda bij de Bredaanse single. Was zich helemaal voorbereid op deze marathon. Alleen is de man met de hamer tegengekomen. De volgende dames en heren zien we daar weer aankomen. En er zijn er natuurlijk nog een heleboel. We gaan nog uren door met al deze mensen die hier allemaal een wedstrijd gaan beëindigen. Met op dit moment hier Mirano Shimakado uit Japan. En dat zit ook bij Mezeret Gola uit Ethiopië. Mezeret Gola uit Ethiopië. En die loopt dan nog een persoonlijk record. Die had 2:35:08 staan. En dat doet ze volgend jaar in China.